crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have a catastrophic global consequences. The Prime Minister's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operation in southern Lebanon. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of arrivals this year has now reached 26,612. Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant attack overnight. It comes as President Zelensky prepares to unveil a victory plan during a crucial allies meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to detail steps towards ending the war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps, US officials suggest it includes a revised request for increased military support and long-ranged missile systems. As Ukraine nears 1,000 days of conflict with Russia, Boris Johnson says the Russian president is bad but not mad. In a candid interview with GBNews' Camilla Tominey, the former Prime Minister shed light on his interactions with Vladimir Putin, providing a glimpse into their complex relationship.
He means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity, but he's chosen that path. And we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And you know, what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia, it's a mistake for Putin.
And you can watch all the highlights from that interview with Boris Johnson here on GB News at 6 o'clock tonight. Now, a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting a major boost, thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technology. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across universities in the UK. Wes Streeting, himself a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. So coming up, the top story breaking news from earlier this afternoon. Sue Gray, yes, a name that we hear a lot, has quit her role as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, saying that she risks becoming a distraction. Very good of her. The Tories say that this is evidence that the Keir Starmer's government is in chaos, which is then coming up, the great British debate this hour. I'm asking, what does Sue Gray's resignation tell you about the state of the Labour Party? And as today marks the eve of the first anniversary of the attacks of Israel on October the 7th, which saw 1,200 people murdered and 250 taken as hostages, Chairman of the National Young Jewish Assembly, Michael Rowe, joins me. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Right, so Sue Gray has quit her role as Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, plunging his government into further crisis. I mean, is this some sort of distraction? The former civil servant has been the Prime Minister's top aide in Number 10 since Labour's general election, but she's been caught up in rows over pay after her salary was revealed to be higher than Sir Keir Starmer's and so on and so forth, and all the disasters that appeared to be happening. She was meant to be getting them ready for government. But joining me now is GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, so big news, Sue Gray. How relevant is Sue Gray to all of this? What does she do? A lot of people don't know. What does the Chief of Staff do?
Well, it's a really important role behind the scenes, and basically she shouldn't be a story. If things are going well, we wouldn't be talking about her. Most chiefs of staff, you wouldn't even know who they were. But like Dominic Cummings, that became Boris Johnson's sort of arch nemesis, she has very much become the story. And for people that think, oh, this is just some Westminster bubble thing, the reason it matters is because we've basically got dysfunction, things not working properly at the heart of Number 10. And what we're seeing as a consequence of that is that the first 3 months of the Labour government have been very, very bumpy indeed. We've had the donations row, which they don't seem to have been able to shut down. You know, coming at the same time they're taking money from pensioners. And there's been all sorts of briefings and counter-briefings. Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, is very important. He's off. Sue Gray, the Chief of Staff, she's off. Morgan McSweeney, who was the mastermind, if you like, between Labour's big victory, where they got over 400 seats on only 2% higher share of the vote than back in 2019. He is the big winner in this because he is going to take that Chief of Staff role. He previously held that role before Sue Gray came in. He's going to have it back now. The hope is that the Prime Minister will now be able to get a grip of this, moving people out, that things will calm down, they will get a better operation going. Certainly, it's been difficult. But I think worth saying that looking back to 1997 and Tony Blair, we did have the whole row about Bernie Ecclestone, Formula One, money being given there, lobbying on tobacco advertising. So this sort of mess at the beginning of government is nothing uncommon, but of course the Conservatives absolutely loving every bit of this, saying that the government is in freefall.
But did he really have to do it right now? Because yesterday we had the second highest number of migrants ever crossing this year, and this story has now overshadowed that. A lot of people thinking, is this some sort of subterfuge to take our eye off the ball of what's actually going on? I mean, there's rumours surfacing around Keir Starmer and all the others. Why right now?
Well, I think it was going to happen sooner rather than later. That's been apparent for quite some time because there's plenty of people in Number 10 deeply unhappy with her, thinking that she was basically a block between the Prime Minister and everybody else. People unhappy about their salaries. Of course, we had the story leaked that she's been paid more than the Prime Minister. So I think it was coming to a head. Why today? Well, we had Peter Kyle, Government Minister, on the broadcast this morning, not confirming or denying. I think it just became untenable. But as you say, Nana, you know, we've had a record number of migrants across the Channel this year. That's now happening on Labour's watch. They've promised to smash the gangs. Of course, it's going to take time, but this is a crisis that the previous government couldn't get a grip of. And you know, people are dying. People died yesterday, including a 2-year-old boy who was crushed in the boat. So
it's tragic. I mean,
absolutely
it's tragic.
terrible.
Putting a child on the boat as well. I mean, it's horrendous. It just needs to stop. Right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much. You'll be back in an hour for another update. Brilliant. Right, also joining me now is former Minister Dennis McShane. DM, I like to call him Danger Mouse. Dennis McShane.
Thank you, N.A.
What does this tell you then about the disaster that appears to be the Labour government at this moment in time?
I got almost nothing to add to Catherine. A very comprehensive report, and it is so typical. She instanced 1997 and the problems with Bernie Ecclestone and other accusations against me. I was there. I was in the Foreign Office, and I was dealing with Europe for Tony all the time. Chief of Staff is an incredibly important position. He or she actually has the full number 10 communications unit apparatus in her house, or his house now, having to take all the calls that come in from anybody abroad go through the Chief of Staff. This actually isn't understood. He is the gatekeeper and fixer for a lot of Britain's foreign policy. Foreign Office is miles away, literally. It's literally a couple of hundred yards away. But and that wasn't Sue Gray's strength. I don't quite know what it was. She never ran a department. She was over 60 as the old retirement age for a Whitehall person, top Whitehall civil servant. And yeah, everybody has been saying for quite a long time, she's become the story, and if you're a civil servant and you become the story, kiss goodbye to that particular job.
But she literally became the story during Partygate as well. It was Sue Gray, Sue Gray, Sue Gray. Everyone talked about somebody you'd never ever heard of, and suddenly she was the story. She's been hovering around. Then there were questions over when she was actually offered the job, whether she was still in links with the Conservative Party at the time and still doing the Partygate investigation, or whether it was afterwards. There's been controversy around her from the beginning, since her name came up. So I
couldn't agree with you more. I was with Andrew Mitchell, the Conservative shadow. I don't know if he's still shadow foreign affairs spokesman. Very, very nice guy, who sort of Sue Gray kind of ended his career because he had a slight altercation leaving number 10 go through the gates with the policeman on duty about his bike. I can't remember the details, but investigation, and Andrew was thrown out.
But how did she end his career? It must have been that he did something wrong and she did the investigation.
Well, I mean, it was
She's neutral, isn't she? Or meant to be.
If you meet a neutral civil servant or a neutral judge or a neutral public prosecutor, please send me their name. I'd like to meet one before I die. She was there upholding whatever she thought. I think Boris Johnson, of course, was Prime Minister, so God knows what was going on. But what I would say is that I'm slightly glad all this is happening now, because the same stuff happened at the end, particularly of the Liz Truss reign. It wasn't a long end, it only lasted 49 days. And then at the end of the Boris Johnson reign, and then finally at the end of the Rishi Sunak reign. So it's much better you get this kind of internal row out and sorted now, and I don't think some of the appointments necessarily will have sorted it, but that's another more technical debate.
Do you think, I mean, at least what you had was, there was at the beginning of the Conservative reign a level of consistency, you know, at the very, very beginning, and I mean even before Boris, so at the very start, there was a smoother transition.
You're talking about David Cameron and Nick Clegg. Yeah, well, perhaps the Labour ought to go into coalition with Liberal Democrats.
But you don't want this at the beginning. Surely not. It's terrible.
It's terrible at any time.
But
all I'm saying
is
that if, I mean, because we will be there reporting for you, if I'm the honour and pleasure of being back talking to you in 1, 2, 3 years' time, and still it's going on, then, you know, you can pass me the glass of strychnine and I'll drink it on air. But right now, I'm sort of happier that all of this is getting out there. And in a sense, it's a funny tribute to Sir Keir Starmer. He's not an old-fashioned politician who's been trying to get elected since he was in his nappies. He came into the job after a period as a chief prosecutor for Britain and a long legal career doing human rights, aged over 50, Prime Minister now. Harold Wilson retired when he was 60, having formed 4 governments.
But what's
Keir is older than him
what's
now.
The point?
Well, just that we have got quite a lot of inexperience there, and a lot of this, I don't want to use the word teething troubles. I've got a new grandchild on the way, I know all about those, but it is, I think, early stage stuff, and I very much hope it settles down. And there's a lot of, I'm not going to rattle through them, I really am not, but there are some interesting positive things, and I'm picking up vibes from red wall seats are going down quite well on decisions that Labour has been taking.
Oh, come off it, really.
No, seriously.
Well, I've spoken to a lot of people who voted for Keir Starmer who are currently having buyer's remorse, more than people saying how great a job he's doing. Although I did listen on one radio station where people blamed the right-wing press for what's happening to Keir
Always
Starmer.
blame the right-wing press, Daddy. You can't go wrong with
I'm just
blaming
in
the
middle.
right-wing
I'm
press.
typical, the far right or the right-wing press or whatever they're calling people who object to Keir Starmer at the moment these days. But very quickly, Dennis McShane, do you think that there is a risk that Keir Starmer could be out before Christmas?
Not in the slightest.
Really?
Yes.
All right, well...
And Pep Guardiola will not be fired. I can't speak for the manager of Manchester United because I can't even pronounce his name properly. So,
All
there we
right.
are.
Thank you, Dennis McShane. That's Dennis McShane. Also, Catherine Forster joining us. Right, if you just tuned in, welcome. 17 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has Israel gone too far? But next, what does the Sue Gray resignation tell us about the state of the Labour Party? Are they crumbling? This is GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
It was revealed that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson had what they called a manly pep talk with Prince Harry in an attempt to persuade the Duke to stay in the UK.
Let's talk to former Royal Gardener Jack Stooks and Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Morning to you both. Richard, what do you think? Do we need to forgive and forget?
Well, firstly, I mean, they don't want to come back, and at the moment, absolutely not. I mean, you'd have a circus every single royal event that involved the Sussexes. You'd have the focus on them and so forth. It would, in reality, be completely impractical if you consider that in the past 4 years, they've conducted a guerrilla war against the royal family. They've done enormous damage to it.
OK, Jack, I know that over the many years you worked for Prince Charles, you got to know both of the boys very well. And you're a bit fed up with the negative way that certainly we now in the media in Britain talk about Harry.
What have they actually done that's been so awful that Britain can't let them come and go as they please? All they've done is be themselves. So Harry chose to marry Meghan. You know, everybody has an opinion, and completely everybody's entitled to that opinion. Like them or loathe them, that's the opinion that people have. But they haven't been given a ban on not coming back to England. So if they want to come back to England, let them come back to England. If they don't want to come back to England, again, they don't need to. It is their lives, and that's what Harry was banging on about at the time. He just wanted to have his life.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, 21 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Remember, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/yoursay. I'll read them throughout the show. But right now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, what does Sue Gray's resignation tell us about the state of the Labour Party? Is it crumbling? Is it falling apart? Can Sir Keir Starmer last till Christmas? The Tories seem to think so, as they say the Prime Minister's losing his top aide throws his government into chaos. Now, she's been caught up in rows over pay after her salary was revealed to be £3 grand higher than Sir Keir Starmer's. So what does her resignation tell us now, so early on, about the state of the Labour Party? Well, joining me now at my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also commentator Jonathan Lisp. OK, Jonathan Lisp, Sue Gray, she's gone. She's moved on.
Yeah, it's not great.
No.
And I have been surprised and disappointed, I suppose, by how early the government has seemed to be shaking. I didn't expect or anticipate it would look like this, because I think that Sue Gray, when she was appointed by Starmer while he was in opposition, most people actually applauded that as a sign that Labour was growing in maturity, in credibility, in seriousness. She was Britain's best-known civil servant. She was very well respected across the political divide before, obviously, Johnson started making sort of partisan attacks on her. The Partygate inquiry that she released was actually sort of quite well applauded across the board at the time. So I think
But there were questions over when she started talking to Sir Keir Starmer about crossing over to the Labour Party, because it seems as though there may have been a crossover while she was actually doing the Partygate investigation.
I think that most people who know her, and I don't know her personally, but I've spoken to people who do, they say that she has incredible professionalism and seriousness, and she wouldn't allow her personal views to cloud any of her professional activities. Clearly, there has been a lot of discord in the Labour Party, in Number 10, about the way that she has been running the show, about sort of, there are a lot of people with axes to grind. We've seen that with the briefings.
She made some of them cry, apparently.
And look, I don't know the inside story of that, Nana, but clearly this is a sign that Labour has maybe taken its eye off the wheel and needs to make itself serious again, re-professionalise, and sort of get some more hands on deck to make it look like a unified operation, because it's not good for any government, particularly a government so early on, to be seeming as though it's divided or in any kind of chaos.
I mean, what is she now? She's the ethics or some advisor for nations and regions?
No, I don't think it's ethics. I think she's appointed some kind of an envoy.
Envoy, that's the envoy for
different regions, and I think Andy Burnham has welcomed that. Look, I don't think it's a non-job. That sounds like
it's made up, though. No one's ever had that. No one's had that job before.
A lot of jobs. Prime Minister was once a made-up job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having jobs.
But there's history with that job. This job, where as somebody who has been in the press a lot, she's become the story, and now has been given this almost what feels like a fictitious job that nobody's ever heard of.
Well, let's see what she does. Let's see what she does with the job. I mean, I remember Boris Johnson said that he wants to be Minister for the Union, and that sort of never really materialised. But clearly, there is a need in government for someone who can bring together the different parliaments of the UK and to make sure the UK operates effectively.
All right, Danny Kelly.
That's really interesting about a made-up job. When I was at the BBC...
Oh, I knew that was coming so early.
I'm going to mention that I was at the BBC for 20-odd years. Whenever they got rid of a station editor because the station was underperforming, the radio figures were lousy, they used to move them sideways, but because they were staff members, they had to create a job, and they were creating jobs. And there was probably 50 jobs at the BBC that were created specifically so that they abided by employment legislation. You can't just sack people, you create a job. And it's really interesting if the government has done this. I was watching Boris Johnson on GBNews this morning, and he was still moaning about the Sue Gray involvement with Partygate. And he was saying that it was loaded against him, that it was biased, and even some 2 or 3 years later, 2022, I think he resigned. And that was what started the resignation, wasn't it? The clamour of all of his own MPs saying, "You got to go."
It was Pincher that did it.
No,
He survived the Sue Gray.
Yeah, but it was a massive contributory factor, wasn't it?
Sure.
And so many Conservative MPs were saying, you can't stand by him. And they were put under pressure, backed into a corner, and then Boris Johnson had to resign. So it's really interesting. A lot of emphasis is placed on the £170,000 as well. I don't think that's that relevant, really.
Her salary being higher than
if that's what the job attracts, then that's what... Maybe you should have an argument about whether Keir Starmer deserves more money rather than highlighting...
But after all the freebies, he can't get anything more.
But it's the first, isn't it? The first resignation. It's really interesting. I don't think it's a rat escaping a sinking ship just yet, because I don't think Labour are a sinking ship. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this story develops in the coming weeks.
Well, see, I said that this is the beginning of like a
yes, that's
movement.
right, you did say.
And people said to me, don't be silly. And now the Chief of Staff has gone, Sue Gray. What does that tell you, in your view?
Bad appointment.
Do you think a bad appointment? Or
it's like a football team. It's like a football manager. The manager's bought a lousy player. It's not the player's fault. Unless, of course, something is going on in the background that we're not aware of. Maybe she is bad news. Maybe people now... If you become bigger than the story, then that's when you get the boot. And maybe Keir Starmer's given her the opportunity to say, go on then, look, you're going, but if you want to resign... Again, the BBC.
Sorry,
Can I just go back to the BBC? The BBC are famous for this. When they get rid of a presenter, I was offered the opportunity to write my own press release.
It's all about him again. He always comes to this.
Jonathan, when they got rid of me, they said, because my contract had expired, all the other presenters were staff, and they wanted to diversify the lineup. And this was an edict for the BBC in London. I was the sacrificial lamb. Biggest show, biggest station, biggest
old
audience.
Lamb.
Wait till you...
we got Donald Trump, didn't we?
Wait till you...
She's seen his crowd sizes.
Wait till you hear this, though. I always remember my boss rang me up to say that they were getting rid of me. He goes, Danny, how do you want us to tell the press? I said, what do you mean? Well, are you going to say that you're going to spend more time with the family, with the business, with your car? I said, Rupert, I want you to be honest with them. I want you to tell them you sacked me. And they had to. And the reason that they do that is twofold. A, it takes the heat off them, because all the listeners would say, why have you got rid of Danny Kelly? Well, we didn't. He left.
OK, but this is just your side.
Sorry.
This is just in this side of the story that he's obviously not got over, a bit like Boris Johnson going on about Partygate. But look, that's your side of the story.
That's correct.
We don't have the BBC's version of events.
That's correct.
We'll take that. We'll take that.
That's the most pro-BBC I think I've ever heard you say that.
With a pinch of salt. It's very nice of me, isn't it, considering what they did to me. But no. So look,
Go on, sorry.
what I was trying to get at to you before you sort of went on a tangent about yourself was, what does that tell you about the Labour Party, the state of the party? If she's gone, the mess that they're in at the moment. Do you think they're distracting us from what's going on in terms of migration?
Here's how I will answer that in a sentence. You know the Rosie Duffield? She left the Labour Party.
See?
And here's my answer, and it is an indirect answer. If she was to do the honest and honourable thing and call a by-election, Labour would lose it.
Right.
And that's the answer to your question.
Well, no, that's
the chaos.
The
party is in chaos.
Last week's question.
The party is in chaos.
Jonathan, final word to your party's in chaos. Well, you're obviously slightly more left-leaning. You probably voted for the Labour Party. You don't disclose
absolutely voted for the Labour Party.
Is there no sense of buyer's remorse as you're watching this unfold with all your principles that you have there?
Of course not.
So you're all right with all the freebie gate?
I want a Labour government. I want a Labour government to succeed. I'm very happy to attack the Labour government when I think it doesn't meet the expectations that the country has a right to have, and that's where I'll continue. But I think they should be a lot more progressive. And look, I'll tell you one thing: if they do good policy and they actually deliver, and people can see the delivering, we're not going to be talking about this kind of stuff in a couple of years.
That's a big if. Well, let's have a look at what you've been saying. Philip says, I think Sir Keir Starmer has dementia. He seems to have completely forgotten what was promised 3 months ago. Linda says, good on Sir Keir Starmer for getting rid of Sue Gray. Why are we piling on him for that? We're not really. We're talking about the state of the party as a result of it. Listen, if you lose your wing woman or wing man, then that says something's going on. Penny says, has Keir smashed the gangs yet? Well, record numbers arrived, fed up with excuses and feeling less safe by the day in this country due to this. And what is happening in the Middle East? Well, exactly. Again, my thoughts, there's a level of distraction going on. Do you think that? Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good afternoon. It's just after 3:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. As you've just been hearing, Sir Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tensions in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's chief advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into her role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has also raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have a catastrophic global consequence. The PM's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operations in southern Lebanon. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to the official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of migrants arrival this year has now reached 26,612. And finally, a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting major funding boost thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technologies. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, himself a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour and more fiery debate with Nana Akua after this break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning into the afternoon, but showers will start developing. Some of these could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder and perhaps merging to give some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, temperatures up at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high, but feeling unpleasant in the north underneath the rain. And then our focus through Monday evening turns towards the south, with heavy spells of rain pushing into Wales and towards the Midlands as well. But as we go through the week, Wednesday holds on to sunshine and showers, but then it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back if you've just tuned in. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, today marks the eve of the first anniversary of the attacks in Israel on October the 7th. Remembrance rallies are being held today in London, Manchester and Leeds, and this comes as a major policing operation took place yesterday in central London as pro-Palestine protests and counter-demonstrations took to the streets. Well, joining me now live is the chairman of the Young National Jewish Assembly, Michael Rowe. Michael, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. Lovely to see you.
So it's a very sort of point in time that now Israel are still fighting. We're still at war with Hamas. And this has become a wider conflict in terms of Hezbollah, the Houthis, pretty much everything that begins with an H. And it's all, as we now know, they are really part of Iran, aren't they, in terms of how they're fighting. Where do you stand with everything? What are your thoughts on what's been happening?
Well, there's two things to say. First of all, that a year on from the 7th of October attacks, I have to tell you, the Jewish community is still very much in a state of shock. It's still very much concerned about what's going on. And we see that a year on since the attacks, really, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Israel rhetoric has only increased. So, as you say now, it started on October the 7th with what was Hamas in Gaza, and it quickly has grown to this whole axis of resistance, as they like to call themselves, across the Middle East, which is fighting Israel. So Israel's now fighting on multiple fronts. It's having to fight this same hatred, though. This hatred is not a hatred just of Israel, it's a hatred of Jews. And really, it's a hatred of freedom-loving nations. And so the point number one is that the Jewish community in the UK and around the world is extremely concerned about what's going on. The lack of support we're getting from the international community is very worrying for me personally. And we see it from the UK as well, a lack of leadership really in allowing Israel to tackle these problems, these systematic problems. So that's point number one. I think the point number two that I'd make is that we are now seeing that the attacks, or the limited attacks, should I say, in Israel against the Hezbollah threat. And as part of that limited ground incursion, we're seeing Israel tackle terrorists. But the rhetoric we hear from the mainstream media, I must say not GB News, but the rhetoric we hear from the mainstream media is that Israel is somehow provoking terrorists. And I think we should always remember it's the opposite, that a year on from the 7th of October, the Israelis do not want to be fighting on multiple fronts. They do not want to be having to evacuate their people out of homes in the north. But they're having to do that because of terrorist threats. I just think it's an important comparison to make, that if the UK had faced even one day of rocket attacks on its southern border from another country, never mind if it's from a terrorist state like Israel's been facing, they would respond straight away. We've seen Israel for nearly 11 months only respond very in a very small way. And a year on from that, they've decided to go in and deal with the terrorist threat. And I think the lack of support we're getting, or Israel is getting, from the world, from the leadership of the world, is a problem.
Well, hold on. I mean, I do agree that there has been a weird pressure being put on Israel to cease and desist rather than Hamas and the actual aggressors. That's my view. But you have had support from the international community. For example, the major attack, you've had two big attacks from Iran, and the international community, Jordan and everybody, we came out that did not allow that to happen. So that's not quite true. I mean, it's not... Well, I appreciate that there's a weird energy with the pro-Palestinian lobby, but you have had support from the international community.
Of course, there has been some support, and we're, of course, grateful for any support we get as a UK Jewish community. And I have to say, both UK governments have been very supportive of the Jewish community in the UK. And we've seen, record investment in security measures for Jewish institutions and schools, etc. So that's been very much well received. However, on an international front, the daily calls we hear for a ceasefire is not the type of support we need to see. Now, of course, everyone wants a ceasefire, but the pressure is massively in Hamas's court, in Hezbollah's court for a ceasefire. It would only take Hamas to release the hostages and we'd have a ceasefire in the next hour. But they will not do that. In fact, they surround their leader with hostages just so Israel will not kill the murderous terrorist who committed or orchestrated the October 7th attack.
What about, though, a lot of people are talking about the number of people that are being killed in Gaza. The figures are all often changing. I think the last one I looked at was since 40,000 or 17,000. I don't know where the numbers are coming from, and as you know, possibly from Hamas, which then makes it difficult to sort of believe.
Well, a lot of those numbers will include terrorists who have been killed.
Absolutely, that's the other point.
And I don't think anyone in the freedom-loving world will want to see those people have still remain in this world.
Well, some people do, because they were complaining about the pager attack, which was, in my view, discriminant. But I did hear a lot of media saying it's indiscriminate, this could have hurt a small child, but anyone with a pager would have been an operative for Hezbollah. So.
Correct. And in fact, also, reports I've read show that Israel didn't just detonate all the pagers in one go. They actually did so systematically once they checked where the holders of the pagers were, to check that no civilians were being harmed. And I think the measures that Israel goes to protect civilians in all of its attacks, defensive attacks, is remarkable. I mean, no other country in the history of warfare, as far as I'm aware, has ever gone to those lengths to minimise civilian harm, dropping letters from aeroplanes, moving civilians out of the way, as I say, not killing a murderous terrorist because he could harm civilians, etc., etc., and the list goes on. And I think now we have to remember Israel is defending itself rather than provoking these attacks. There was a ceasefire on the 6th of October last year. This day last year, there was a ceasefire. The next day, Israelis woke up to sirens, to murderous terrorists at a music festival, to their homes being invaded by murderers, by rapists, and we saw babies burnt alive. And that is when the ceasefire ended. That's when Israel had to say, we have the first duty of any government is to defend its people, to keep its people safe, to keep its borders safe. And in order to do that, we have to go after these terrorists. And I think, we need to see, instead of the typical calls we hear from the Foreign Secretary and others, just calling for a ceasefire in Lebanon and for the hostilities to end. Of course, the hostilities need to end, but you can't do that. You can't end the hostilities when you have a murderous terrorist regime on your border looking to kill you, sending over thousands of rockets. And I think we need to start seeing some grown-up discussion around how we support Israel to tackle this problem.
But some people see Israel as a terrorist. Now, that's just another view. It's not my view. I don't hold that view. But there is the argument, and even yesterday on my show, somebody said, oh, the terrorist Israel, and I just thought, I don't see that. But what about that? Because we're looking at, obviously, now there's bombing in Lebanon, people are dying there. Do you feel the war's getting a little bit out of hand now, maybe Benjamin Netanyahu, who's slightly overstretching things, or is this necessary?
Well, there's 2 points there. Just first on the Israel terrorist state. I mean, all you have to do is to walk down the streets of Jerusalem. I mean, I lived in Jerusalem for a small period of time, and you will see that there are Jews, Christians, Arabs, Bedouins, etc., etc., all living together happily, peacefully, many of them as Israeli citizens. So all you have to do is walk down the streets and you'll see it's the opposite of a terrorist state. Now, if I was to go into Gaza or into Hezbollah-controlled Lebanon as a visible Jew, I don't think I'd still be around to tell the tale. So Israel is the opposite of a terrorist state. It's the only democracy in the Middle East, and it's a freedom-loving country. Now, is Israel fighting too many fronts? Unfortunately, that is the nature of the Middle East at the moment. We see Iran as an aggressor, and it's encouraging its proxies all across the Middle East to attack Israel. So I think there's 2 things to say. First of all, the international community needs to work with Israel to counter the Iranian threat. The threat, by the way, is not just to Israel, it's to the whole world. Iran would quite happily kill people on the streets of Britain and the US and many other countries. I think we need to work seriously to tackle that threat. But I think also we need to support the Israeli government. And it's not just Netanyahu. I mean, the people of Israel are quite united in the fight against terrorism. There are many divisions in Israeli society. That's one of the strengths of its democracy. And if you had those divisions in Arab countries, I don't think they'd be around for very long, because different opinions are not tolerated. In Israel, there are many fronts it's having to tackle, unfortunately, but I hope the international community will work together so that we can fight those threats for the whole of the peace in the whole of the world. Really.
And to add to that, I'd actually like to see a little bit more pressure being put on Iran and the other communities to have a ceasefire, not just on Israel.
Most definitely.
Because Israel are the most receptive to that notion.
Well, Iran is the head of the octopus, and its tentacles are everywhere. We need to stop that head before we can stop the tentacles.
Although another head might grow, unfortunately, and it might be worse than the head that you just got rid of. That's the fear.
The UK has a track record of tackling hatred and discrimination and terrorism. We did it with the Nazis. We can do it again with Iran.
All right. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. That is Michael Rowe. He is the chairman of the Young Jewish Assembly. Right, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Stay tuned. Next, my Great British Debate. I'm asking, has Israel gone too far as the country continues to bomb Gaza and launch escalatory attacks in Lebanon and Iran? Stay tuned.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Michael Sheen talks about how he was wearing false teeth and wigs and whatever else to play this part. How's it gone down over that side of the pond?
I mean, I have to tell you, I absolutely loved it. I'm seeing everybody else there. They think it's a hoot, but Ben and Anne, it is very funny. And you walk away from it thinking that was great television. But is that appropriate when you think about the fact that it's associated with Jeffrey Epstein? You know, after it was over, I thought, I'm going to say good things about this. But the further I get away from it, the more I think, but what about these women that were violated by Jeffrey Epstein when they turned on the television? Were they laughing? Did they see the humor in it? Or are they horrified that it's become a joke?
The dialogue seemed very stilted and expositional, I thought. But then you think, well, that's clearly what they were trying to achieve. And it wasn't a documentary, it was a drama. And some bits were clearly made up.
Absolutely. I mean, when you watch the princesses crying, when you watch the princesses making decisions behind the scenes, it's very compelling television. And you have to remind yourself, similar to The Crown, that you are watching something based on a true story, but has been greatly exaggerated for entertainment value. And I initially thought, oh, this is horrible for Prince Andrew. And it is. But at the same time, I think that sometimes these pieces make the royal family a little bit more relevant. They introduce new people, and people are now watching them a little more closely. And I think it's a double-edged sword. It can be both things. It can be bad. It can be good for the royal family.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
God, listen, Jonathan telling us a story about somebody wanted his autograph. Really? Why? Well, I couldn't help it. Right. This is your famous, aren't you? Right.
Funny.
If you just tuned in, welcome. I can't wait to hear the rest of it. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, we're Britain's news channel, and I'm asking, has Israel gone too far? Now, it's nearly a year since October the 7th attacks, which saw Hamas attack southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking about 250 of them as hostages. Now, since then, Israel has continued to bomb Gaza and launch escalatory attacks in Lebanon. But, of course, Gaza and Hamas have continued to bomb Israel as well. So let's be clear that this is a thing that is happening on both sides. Now, Lebanon and Iran also, they've been bombing, the Israelis have been bombing, though, because they're trying to eliminate Hamas, Hezbollah, and, of course, the Houthis. But have we gone too far? Has Israel gone too far? The Pope has suggested Israel has been immoral and disproportionate, saying its military domination has gone beyond the rules of war, whilst the UN's International Court of Justice says that the country has violated international law. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking you that question. Do you think they have? Well, joining me now, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. Danny Kelly, I will come to you first.
Look, if the Pope thinks they've gone too far, if international bodies think they've gone too far, if they've violated international laws,
Yeah, but what do you think?
Macron, I'm getting to it. If all of these senior worldwide figures think that, yes, I think they're going too far. I think.
But what would you do? Imagine you're in a territory, you're being attacked. The head of the snake is actually Iran, that is supplying all these different factions, and Iran are very, very wealthy. These factions are all attacking because they have backing of Iran, and we know that is the case now because Iran have directly attacked Israel in a manner that would have literally destroyed the country had the international community not got together. So what would you say?
I would back off the, it seems to me, indiscriminate nature of the bombing. I would back off. I think Biden...
But it's not, is it? You're saying Israel's indiscriminate.
Yeah, they
what
bombed
about Iran?
a mosque and a school, I think, in Gaza. 26 people lost their lives.
Yeah, but if your enemy is hiding in there amongst the civilians, then what do? Do you just leave them?
I wonder whether there is a real and present danger to Israel, as we are led to believe. And I think because people are saying that there's going to be a duplicate of the October the 7th.
Well, there may well be. They've said they'll do it again, haven't they?
No, they have, but I don't think... I think Israel would be on their guard. And I worry about a Middle East escalation. It's an impossible question to answer because you've got to pick a side, haven't you? You've got to pick either the Israeli side and their right to exist, which I am an advocate of. I understand and I support the Israeli right to exist and to defend themselves.
OK, but what you've just said there means that that's exactly what they're doing.
I think Biden summed it up. I think they should back off, and Biden summed it up for me when they successfully knocked out 99% of these flying drones, and Biden said, take it as a win, BB. And BB didn't. He went and...
Well, it doesn't work like that, though, because the war's still raging, and the only person you've silenced are Israel and not everything around them. Jonathan Liss.
Well, it's not going to be much of a debate, I'm afraid, because I agree with most of what Danny just said.
So you're arguing with me. That's fine. Let's do this.
Let's do this. Look, if you are invading a sovereign country, that country is going to fight back. If Lebanon was invading Israel with a ground force, we would absolutely be condemning that completely rightly. So Israel should not be invading other sovereign nations.
Well, even if that nation is creating a situation where Israel cannot put its people, so about 60 to 80,000 people have been moved from their border because of the fighting on the other side.
Nana, people in southern Lebanon can't live in their homes either without fear of being blown up.
Perhaps they should consider...
Well, perhaps we should consider a diplomatic solution, because endless war is not the answer.
But you know what they said there? They said, we'll continue to fire rockets until Israel stop their fight with Hamas. But, of course, Hamas won't stop the fight with Israel.
I think that they said there needs to be a ceasefire.
Yeah, they did.
That's what they said. And that's not a controversial opinion. Pretty much all major world leaders have called for an immediate ceasefire.
But they only appear to be calling it on Israel, and this is my issue.
No, a ceasefire is both sides. A ceasefire has to be both sides by definition.
To be. I'd like
no
to
one's
see
saying
the
that a ceasefire, just Israel has to stop firing, invading while Hamas can carry on. No one's saying that.
Well, I'd like to see more pressure put on all the other nations to stop this war as well. But what do you think? GBNews.com/your say. Next, my niggle, Nana's niggle. It's on Rachel Reeves and her plans for the economy. Is she the new Liz Truss? We all remember how that ended. Stay tuned, that is on the way next. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning into the afternoon, but showers will start developing. Some of these could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder and perhaps merging to give some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, the temperatures are at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high, but feeling unpleasant in the north underneath the rain. And then our focus through Monday evening turns towards the south with heavy spells of rain pushing into Wales and towards the Midlands as well. But as we go through the week, Wednesday holds on to sunshine and showers, but then it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win a whopping £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Take a year off and keep it to yourself. You don't even need to tell the taxman, as it's totally tax-free. For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome. It's just coming up to 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. Right, breaking news from earlier this afternoon. Sue Gray has quit her role as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, saying that she's risked becoming a distraction. Now, the Tories say that Sir Keir Starmer's government are in chaos. Are they right? You can answer that in my poll on X. It is up right now. Then, in my niggle, which is coming up next, can we really trust Labour with the economy? As Rachel Reeves plans to ease borrowing rules, will she just crash it like Liz Truss? Then the interview today. I'm joined by lawyer, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn. Yes, he was here last week, but he only got a few minutes because then he was interrupted by Keir Starmer's speech. So he's going to give us the rest of his story and discuss his remarkable career from broadcaster to lawyer. He's done pretty much everything. You will not want to miss that. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, resigns. Her exit follows reports of tensions in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's chief advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who is now stepping in to replace her in the role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has also raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have catastrophic global consequences. The PM's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground offensive operation in southern Lebanon. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to the official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June of this year. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of arrivals now this year has reached 26,000. Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant overnight attack. It comes as President Zelensky prepares to unveil a victory plan during a crucial allies meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to detail steps towards ending its war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps, US officials suggest it includes a revised request for increased military support and long-range missile systems. As Ukraine nears 1,000 days of conflict with Russia, Boris Johnson says the Russian president is bad, not mad. In a candid interview with GB News' Camilla Tominey, the former Prime Minister shed some light on his interactions with Vladimir Putin, providing a glimpse into their complex relationship.
He means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity, but he's chosen that path. And we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And you know, what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia, it's a mistake for Putin.
And you can watch all the highlights from that interview with Boris Johnson here on GB News at 6 o'clock tonight. Now, a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting a major boost thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technology. The Health Secretary says funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, himself a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. And a British climber stranded on a mountainside in northern India has been rescued after being trapped for 3 days. Faye Manners and American Michelle Dovrak were stranded at more than 21,000 feet after losing their equipment in a rockfall. A French climbing group helped them descend more after being airlifted to safety by the Indian Air Force. The 37-year-old celebrated the rescue on social media, saying they're back and down safe. Fantastic news. Those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, of course, breaking news, the top story today, Sue Gray has resigned from her position as Downing Street Chief of Staff. In a statement, she revealed that she was standing down because the intense commentary around her position becoming a distraction to the government's vital work. The former top civil servant will take on a new government role as the Prime Minister's envoy for the regions and nations. GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster, joins me now. So what is this role that she's going to be taking on? Sounds to me like a made-up role. Has anybody ever held that position before?
That's an excellent question. I would hazard a guess that this is a role that has been found for her, and it's about saving face, isn't it? Because clearly, as Chief of Staff, that's an incredibly powerful position. She's not got that job, so the role that she's now taking is the Prime Minister's envoy for the regions and nations. So working with the mayors, with the devolved administrations. Of course, she does have a lot of experience in Northern Ireland in particular, but make no mistake, it's a big demotion, and basically it's because Downing Street, the operation at the heart of government, has not been working as it should. And for those that think it's a very sort of niche Westminster thing, the reason that it matters is because Keir Starmer, Labour have only been in power 3 months, and we have all seen the problems that they have got themselves into, many of which are basically of their own making. In other words, all the donations, the way it's been handled, and coming at the same time as you're taking money from pensioners. So there's been a lot of rumblings about Sue Gray for a long time. People unhappy, feeling that she's a block, that she's a bit of a control freak in terms of access to the Prime Minister. Also, a lot of more junior people in Number 10 feeling very unhappy with what Sue Gray is paid, more than the Prime Minister, and what they're paid. And also a bit of a turf war. Her Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, the most important civil servant in the land, no love lost. He is also leaving. That's already been announced. But Morgan McSweeney is the big winner in this because he was previously Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff. Sue Gray, of course, was a big civil servant. She led the Partygate investigation while Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, of course, into all the gatherings at Downing Street, and raised a lot of eyebrows when it turned out that she was going across to work for Labour. But basically, her job was to get Labour ready to go into government and to know how things work, to smooth the way for them. But it's been quite bumpy, hasn't it?
Indeed. Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That is Catherine Forster. It's just coming up to 10 minutes after 4 o'clock. So we have a Labour government that many felt would be honest and far better than the Tories after the Tories failed the country by bringing us the highest tax burden since the war and allowing things like EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, to flourish. The Tories bloated the civil service and, don't get me started on migration. We had the Liz Truss mini-budget, and there has been no end to ministers blaming her for crashing the economy.
Never forget what the Conservatives did. 2 years ago today, in their clamour to cut taxes for the richest, they crashed the economy, sent mortgages spiralling and put pensions in peril.
But is Rachel Reeves, who has recently gone ginger to, I suspect, soften her look and perhaps the blow, is she about to do the very same thing? Apparently, in her budget at the end of the month, Rachel plans to ease borrowing rules to unlock £50 billion of spending. So basically, she's rewriting the fiscal rules so that she can increase debt for investment in all these projects that they're planning. Now, this would, according to the Treasury's own analysis, increase the cost of debt and push up mortgage rates. Bit like what Liz Truss did. Rachel has reportedly and repeatedly said that she will not play fast and loose with the public finances and will protect working people. But in doing this, it is suggested that it could put interest rates up by 1.25%, so from 5% to 6.25%, adding an extra £200 on average to a mortgage, which is not great considering rates are falling and that there was talk of the banks getting into bidding wars. Does any of this sound familiar? Remember Liz Truss? Rishi Sunak had to take over. Of all the pledges he made, the only one he kept was halving inflation. Now people might say that that wouldn't have happened anyway, or that would have happened anyway, but we'll never know, so credit where credit is due. Had it gone the other way, we would have blamed Rishi Sunak for the mess. But if there was one thing that I trusted Rishi on, it was his ability to handle the markets and eventually balance the books. The Tory party were left an austere economy. I mean, who can forget Liam Byrne's note that there was no money left when they took over? We've been backtracking ever since, but the green shoots of recovery on the horizon have been crushed by this gloomy government. Mrs Thatcher was right.
And socialist governments traditionally do make a financial mess. They always run out of other people's money. It's quite a characteristic of them.
And now we have them sidestepping, and also Sue Gray, the sidestepping of Sue Gray. I mean, she was pretty much Keir Starmer's wingwoman. Her ex-role as Chief of Staff was meant to get the party ready for government to take the flak and put him in a good light, but there's been a lot of take. Perhaps it's a distraction tactic, who knows? She's now the specialist envoy for nations and regions, which sounds to me like a made-up role. So get ready, folks. We're in for a white knuckle ride. Time to tighten our belts. We've got 5 years of this. So here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the government scrap VAT plans on private schools? Education organisations are calling for the 20% VAT to be delayed until next September at the very least, to give independent schools more time to adapt and register for the new tax. Then former President Trump has returned to Pennsylvania nearly 3 months after an assassination attempt on his life. We'll be heading over to the US to get more details from Paul Dudridge in Worldview. All of that coming up. But as ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But now let's return to Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Is she the new Liz Truss? Well, joining me now to discuss this further is the economist and businessman Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Justin with a cat. Very cute. Is it real or is it one of those stuffed cats?
This is very real. This is Nico. He's well up on the interest rates.
Yeah, no, I would have been a bit concerned if it was. Well, like that cat that was on the ship, I can't remember what that was. But so, Justin, let's start with this thing that Rachel Reeves is planning now to release funds from the economy. How is she really doing that? What technical thing is she doing to make those funds available? What rules is she changing?
Well, there are all sorts of fiddling things you can do when it comes to economics to actually say whether it's affordable or not and how you change the rules. So, for example, you can actually try and make the debt further out. So instead of being 10 years, 50 years, maybe it never actually gets undateable, never actually repayable. So you could do something like that. You could actually say this is debt which is going to be used for infrastructure and therefore it's not used on day-to-day expenditure by the government. So you're going to change the rules that way, to change some of the titles. But fundamentally, all economists will be looking at how much money the government's going to be borrowing. Remember, there's that one word that runs this, and this is what Liz Truss was so stupid about, confidence. If you blow the confidence that people have in the British economy or the British government and its finances, then people won't invest. Unless, of course, you put interest rates up, and you have to put them up quite a lot to get people to trust you if you just lost their trust. Those figures you said of £200 a month, no one really knows. But yes, that could be possible if it was actually done really badly. No, what she has to do is put a message across saying, OK, we're adjusting the way we're doing the calculations, but by the way, we're going to have the Office of Independent Evaluation to actually check these things to make sure that they're viable, and therefore get some confirmation of it. If she doesn't do that, she'll run into the same problem as Truss did, that I don't believe you. And of course, we're in a position where everybody around the world at the moment, the global economy is growing, but it's growing very slowly. Inflation's been coming down, but the nervousness over the areas you've been talking about in terms of politics, in terms of the war going on, both in the Middle East and Ukraine, and these are all giving you very good reasons not to invest in something if you're slightly concerned about it. And when you're changing the rules on government debt, particularly when you've got government like Britain, which is a lot of debt, then you need a lot of confidence, just like me with Nico and his nails.
Is she right to be doing this, in your view, by changing the rules so that she can borrow more money, which could potentially put interest rates up, which could then mean people are concerned the repayments will be a lot higher? Didn't Rishi Sunak leave them with a relatively good, it was a relatively good handover, wasn't it?
Well, and the answer is we don't know yet, because we haven't seen all the details. Of course, you expect a new government to blame the old government for all sorts of things. But what they must do, not spend their entire time just throwing rotten tomatoes at the old lot, but actually sitting there saying, right, here is our plan to get more money into Britain, more money in Britain invested. Now, remember, there is no shortage of money in this country to invest. So there's lots of money, there's pension money, all sorts of things that can be accessed. We want more people to invest externally, but they will only do so if they trust to think that actually you're going to be able to pay that money back. Now, Britain's got a great record of very, very rarely, only on one occasion have we actually not made our payments, and we certainly never defaulted, whereas most other countries around the world have defaulted. Even one of the states in America have defaulted. So they regard us highly. But do not just rely upon that trust forever and a day. You're talking about people's investments, so they want that money back with interest. And if there's more concern going around, then they'll say to Britain, thank you very much. But I tell you what, I think I'll go to America. That looks a bit safer to me. So now is the time for clear, logical explanation from her and the team as to how this money is going to be borrowed, over what period, and actually what is going to be invested to get the right return. It's not being invested in nice little airy-fairy policies to get them re-elected. Well, they don't need that for another few years. But actually to get the economy going. Everyone talks about growth the entire time. There are lots of things we can actually grow very successfully, like technology in those areas. And it's about getting that reform through to make that investment easier, putting through. And also, don't hammer the investors with tax, because actually, heaven forbid, that puts them off as well.
Well, you see, that's the thing, the point that you just made there. Whilst they're talking about this new green energy and all the investment and the £22 billion that they're talking about pushing into all of that, in the meantime, they're taxing businesses to the hilt. And it sounds like they're going to be taxing us more. How can this... Do you feel that this is the right direction, in your view? Is she doing the right thing?
I'm concerned at the moment because I can't see where the creativity comes here. What you want to see is more businesses with more investments, creating more jobs, spending more money. And when you do that, actually, you then get more tax income coming in. So what I would be doing is creating tax incentives. And I don't mean giving money away to companies to go and fritter it away, but actually giving people breaks so that when they do invest, like the Enterprise Investment Scheme and things like that, they actually get some tax breaks for actually carrying out investment. Make it positive, not negative. If you're just merely hammering to try and get more juice out of it, you're not going to actually get that benefit. So where are the new businesses? And I can point to where you'll find them, particularly in the technology area. Give them the tax breaks to get investment coming in domestically. What we tend to find at the moment is we're really good at setting these businesses up, and then our joyous friends there in California come over and say, that's marvellous, by the way, come to California with me, and that's the last we see of it. It's about time we started thinking about domestically having more enthusiastic investment in those future areas. Do that by tax incentives, not tax increases.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's an economist and a businessman. Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. Well, it's just coming up to 20 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Up next, will Rachel Reeves' borrowing plans cause mortgage misery across the country? You'll hear the thoughts of my wonderful panel. Stay tuned.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Richard, you know, the King will probably fly there, I would imagine, with the Queen. You can guarantee they'll have to make a point about offsetting their carbon just to keep that lot happy. They won't use the walkabout term because they'll have to keep the Aboriginal community happy over there. Obviously, they'll be fine that the Queen's face has now been taken off banknotes over there, replaced, I believe, by a member of the Aboriginal community, naturally. You know, you've got all of these tick boxes that the King and the royal family have to do, instead of just maybe, I don't know, leading, being there, being present. Why do they keep bowing down to this stuff?
Well, firstly, as I say, I mean, if you look at the Commonwealth, there are 56 countries. Now, I think that's an enormously important institution, and we benefit in all sorts of ways, as do the other countries who are members of it. Now, if you don't take account, with times changing, by the way, of course, as they did during Queen Elizabeth's reign, if you don't take account of various sensitivities, especially certain pressure groups, I'm not suggesting that we write off our history as being something that's dreadful. There are ups and downs and pluses and minuses, we all know that. But the point is to be sensitive to other cultures, and that is absolutely pivotal.
What we're seeing in the UK, a lot of these same issues do crop up in Australia, especially with freedom of speech and saying the wrong thing, getting cancelled. I've met with so many people who have personally, like, they've been deplatformed, lost their jobs just for having an opinion, just for potentially saying the wrong thing, and then losing their livelihood as a result. So with Australia, I think particularly this is the trend that we saw from 2020 with the lockdowns, especially in Melbourne, some of the harshest lockdown restrictions in the world. Now, Australia is known as being a country of freedom and liberty. So then I think for many Australians, it was a huge turning point, a big wake-up call.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. It's 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're here now. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Let's welcome again to my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. All right, let's talk about it. Will Rachel Reeves, is she going to crash the economy? I'll go with you, Jonathan Liss. Is she going to do it? Because she's come up with this thing. She's wanting more money, 22 billion from her other one, and then there's more money for this and more money. I think it's 50 billion this time. I mean, seriously.
No.
You don't think so?
No. She's not going to crash the economy. I wish that she was actually a little bit more chill, as they say,
what does that
about
mean?
the economy. It means that she has hemmed herself in with very, very tight fiscal rules, which limits the amount of money that the government can borrow for everyday spending. And that is what we call treasury brain, where the Treasury is sort of counting every penny and not actually realising the value of things, and also, importantly, the value of long-term investment. Britain has become such a kind of an officious nation, if you like, that we're just looking at day-to-day spending and we're not thinking long-term about anything. We're not thinking about big infrastructure projects. We're not thinking about sort of like long-term energy security.
Well, she is.
So
they
transport.
Are.
Not as much as we need to.
We've got pylons down the tracks, solar panels, you know, the carbon capture.
I think we need a lot more. I think that, you know, the conversation we're having currently about HS2, whether it's going to, obviously it should have been extended, it should never have been cut back, and that's not the Labour government's fault, but about whether it's going to terminate at Euston or Old Oak Common is kind of symptomatic of the government's sort of focus on getting through the next cycle rather than thinking about what's going to happen in 20 or 30 years' time. So I think that she should absolutely relax the fiscal rules. I think it was a mistake to hem herself in on tax rises. So we'll wait and see what rabbit she pulls out of the hat on the 30th of October for the budget. But in a word, no, she is absolutely so terrified of Labour's previous reputation for being reckless with the economy that she will do everything she can, and I think to avoid that, I think that she'll actually err too much on the side of caution.
All right, Danny Kelly.
I think they've displayed some reckless spending behaviour and how they've actually placed money from... And I'm going to go back to the old age pensioners. So some, not the very poorest, because they're on pensioner credit, I get that, but some people who are just on the cusp of that and they have just a few quid more and they don't get it. I think that's reckless myself. I think they're spending £10 billion, which Ed Miliband is throwing. It's a long-term thing, £10 billion towards the net zero 2050. I'm not a sceptic, I'm not a denier of climate change, but I think unless it's a global thing, I just sometimes look at the futility of it, about it's almost a punitive nature. And to throw £10 billion...
I think it was 22 billion, actually, for carbon capture.
No, that's separate. I think...
It's another one.
I think that 22 billion, which coincidentally
Carbon
is the
capture.
same figure that...
The black hole that they're all falling in.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's reckless to give the public sector people so much of a pay rise instantly. I think they could have done it maybe by piecemeal, and they could have said, OK, we're going to give you this much, but don't worry, some of the oldest people and the most poorest people in the country, don't worry, you can still put your heating on this year. And I think that is reckless. So they've displayed a reckless way of spending money,
well,
in my opinion. Are they going to crash the economy? I hope not. I want this Labour government to succeed. I'm not so, ideologically intransigent that I want them to fail. I want them to be a success.
Well, see, no one wanted Liz Truss to crash the economy on the left either, because that hurt all of us. And, the pound, what we don't talk about, the pound went to its lowest level against the dollar since US independence, and that was terrible as well.
Yes, but the
it's come back up again.
It has gone back up.
But to be fair, let's be fair, the markets are part of all of that as well. And for the pound to crash, that's quite useful for some of those who are investing, some of the traders.
There are always people who make money out of it, but it was obviously because of what the Truss government did at that time that we got to that pass. So, look, as I said, the Labour government will do everything they can to avoid that. I don't think it was reckless with the winter fuel payments. I think it was complacent. And I think they made a political mistake. There are a lot of political mistakes that were made in the early weeks. And then it became such a totemic issue, they had to double down on it. Yeah. I suspect in their hearts they knew it was the wrong decision, but because they had made it such a fig leaf, if you like, or like a figurehead for what they were planning to do, they had to kind of carry on with it.
But what does that tell you about them? That they will come up with some ridiculous policy, which the winter fuel allowance clearly is. And we all know it, even the unions know it, the people within their own party know it. Well, a lot of them wanted to say that they didn't approve of it, but they were too scared. What does that tell you about them when they're making a mistake, that they're still heading in the same direction and they're handling it, they're in charge of our money?
I think that all governments get into positions where they have to sort of die on silly hills. Because they know that if they back down, the story will then become about their weakness.
Well, it's about pensioners dying on silly hills. It's pensioners dying on silly hills.
I was opposed to the policy. I think that, look, I do think there was a kernel of the policy there, which was that there are a lot of rich pensioners, very undeniably rich pensioners in this country who literally don't need the payment. And they were using it, by their own admission, they were using it to pay for the holidays, whatever. That's not necessary when there are people who really do need money. But the way they went about it was a complete... a wasteful expenditure of political capital.
I find that not really necessarily the policy itself, which I think is completely wrong. I find the energy directed to the policy as, there's lots of rich pensioners and blah, blah, blah. These people have worked all their lives. A lot of them have saved up their money. They've worked hard to pay off the mortgage so that they can be where they are, because they know in their old age they're not going to be working.
Why stop there?
It does feel as though that those who have worked hard, been prudent, are being penalised. Now, I do agree that there is a line where you could draw and not give out that winter fuel payment, but it's not at £11,000.
But why stop with the winter fuel payments? If you're a wealthy pensioner, why not means test yourself? And if you've got the ability to fund your retirement, then why don't you just stop the pension completely?
Well, I actually think, that...
I mean, I could see something like that happening.
What do you mean, stop?
Well, if you're a pensioner with a load of dough, you don't need the 300 nicker, do you? You could argue, or the Labour government could argue, you don't need your pension, so we're not going to pay your pension.
I think that
that's the next logical
there are lines on
step.
there. A pension is... most people would agree that the pension is a universal sort of benefit.
You put money in
which
from your tax.
Which has existed for well over 100 years. The winter fuel payment was an additional bonus paid out by Gordon Brown under the Labour government. It didn't exist before that. If it hadn't existed, no one would have asked for it. And it's actually not that much money because it hasn't sort of been indexed.
Well, maybe not
it's the same
to
amount.
you.
No, but I'm saying it's a lot of money for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that far more people should have been able to keep it. If they were going to change the way to get it, I think that the threshold should have been much higher.
They could have deducted it. They could have deducted it off the pensions of those who are wealthier. So, you know, those who get the state pension, because if you're wealthy, you can still get the state pension. If you've paid into it, you're entitled to it. You've put the money in. But they could have perhaps deducted it from the pensions of those who are wealthier, who meet a certain threshold, rather than this ridiculous way of saying, 11 grand, and then we're not going to get anybody who earns any more than that is not going to get anything. £11,000 isn't a lot of money.
It just concerns me in a sense that Keir Starmer said he's going to come after the people with the broadest shoulders. OK, now, who are the people with the broadest shoulders? The first people who are the broadest shoulders have the most weak shoulders, the smallest, the most narrow shoulders, and they're old-age pensioners who are on the cusp of pension credits, and they're having to forsake the 300 nicker. So he told us before the election, in the morning after the election, he's going to have to make some tough decisions, and he's going to come after the people with the broadest shoulders. What does he do? The first thing he does, he takes the dough off the old people.
All right, let's have a look at what you've been saying at home. Michael says Starmer and his cronies are making it up as they go along. They'll change the rules and laws whenever they feel the need. They're walking all over democracy and wiping their feet on Parliament. Sandra says, I trust in Rachel Reeves. I think that she's got a good head on her shoulders and that she'll deliver a budget that we all want. She's nothing like Liz Truss. Well, we'll see. We shall see. Let's see if she gets the OBR to check her figures. Keep sending me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should the government scrap its VAT plans for private schools? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good afternoon. It's just after 4:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tensions in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's Chief Advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into her role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has also raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of direct conflict between Israel and Iran, which he says could have a catastrophic global consequence. Starmer's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operations in southern Lebanon. A record-breaking 973 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of survivors this year is now 26,000. And a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting a major boost, thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technology. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, himself being a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning into the afternoon, but showers will start developing. Some of these could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder and perhaps merging to give some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, the temperatures up at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high, but feeling unpleasant in the north underneath the rain. And then our focus through Monday evening turns towards the south with heavy spells of rain pushing into Wales and towards the Midlands as well. But as we go through the week, Wednesday holds on to sunshine and showers, but then it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's just coming up to 38 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, great to have your company. I'm Nana Akua. No, I'll do that in the next one. Right, so we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the government scrap its VAT plans for private schools? Now, Labour's 20% VAT on independent schools may not go to plan. It comes as organisations call for the move to be delayed until next September to give them time to adapt and register for the new tax. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, you know what, is it time for them to scrap it? I mean, it may not even bring the money that they're expecting. Well, joining me now, my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. Danny Kelly.
I thought that was a bit of a nasty policy. And to be fair to the Labour Party, he said that's what they were going to do. That was part of the manifesto. So you can't, like, clump it all together with the pensioners. You can't clump it all together with giving away sovereign territory. This has all come after the election results. I thought it was nasty. And it smacked of classic Marxism in the sense that the proletariat were benefiting from the sacrifices that the bourgeoisie had to make. The bourgeoisie, Jonathan's looking at me perplexed. The bourgeoisie, the perception of wealth, the middle class. And not everyone is minted who sends their kids to private school either. And it just smacked of classic socialism, almost like we're coming to get you. And that's how we're going to be as a party. He's still looking perplexed. I'll give you a lesson on Marxism one day.
I don't think he needs it.
I can't wait for that.
Yes,
I'm not a Marxist.
You're
I'm not a
not-
Marxist.
No, I'm not saying you are.
No, but I think Nana might have been. Look, this policy is not about. We've had this like a deja vu, Nana. We've had this conversation about 15 times. But
Right.
No one is saying. Well, no one in the Labour government is saying that private schools should be forcibly closed down. Everyone has the right, if they're rich enough, to send their kids to private schools. All this is about eliminating a tax break that private schools were de facto claiming. And it's saying that you're very welcome to have a private school, but we are going to tax that and use that tax in order to fund education more broadly for the rest of the country. That's all it is. Now,
in what way do you think that is a tax break, just in your view? Why is it a tax break?
Because it's a tax benefit that private schools were able de facto to have because they weren't paying VAT that applies to the vast majority of businesses.
But nowhere in the world, if you look at them, none of them have put VAT on education.
Funnily enough, this might be one of those elusive Brexit benefits we've been hunting for such a long time because, as I understand it, you were not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to do that
if you were within the EU.
Yes. So I do find it slightly amusing that so many of the people who are viciously opposed to this policy were also very much in favour of a Brexit. Well, they labelled it.
But then it's, well, I would laugh again because the Labour Party are taking that on when they were dead set against Brexit. So
well, now it's happened. We have Brexit, and if Brexit allows you to do this, which I think the majority of the country is in favour of, we have to remember 7%, only 7% of
Where did you get
kids
that from?
go to private schools, and we just had the Labour government standing on this platform elected in a landslide.
I don't think you can dismiss 7% of people, which
I'm not dismissing anyone.
Well, you are, because you're making it out that it's not relevant. Yet if this was a trans conversation, you would be capitulating to the small minority of people who want something to change. It's
not about minority rights.
No, but you literally just dissed 7%.
I didn't.
Only 7%, as though it's irrelevant.
No, I didn't.
But why is it in other conversations where the minority are pushing something on, a lot of people on the left are quite happy to go along with it?
I'm saying that 7%, this is not, no one has... Trans people have human rights. No one's saying it's a human right to go to private school. This is not about human rights.
Well, it could be, in a sense that you could be breaching someone's human rights by making them unable to do it, especially if they've got special education needs. There is a lot of those schools the state schools cannot look after people with SEND children. I know this.
Well, the government has actually said that it will look at that particular issue, and I welcome that, because if there are cases where only a private school can serve those children with those special needs, then that is absolutely should be exempt. I
Yes, but you can't exempt a child when you are actually charging the school. So, you see, this is what they say, we'll have some exemptions. Does that mean they will exempt the school from paying the VAT? Because the school are then ultimately obliged in the end to pass that expense on to the parents. So how are they going to mitigate against it to protect individuals?
I can actually address that because I'm a VAT-registered business away from broadcasting. So I pay 20% VAT on my profits, but I can reclaim some VAT, an element of VAT on things, my expenditure, for example. So let's just say, and also we mustn't confuse ourselves, though not every private school is like Eton.
Exactly.
Lots of private schools are charitable status.
Most of them are.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's not like they're multi-million-pound generating businesses.
Well, a lot of the very richest private schools are also charities.
Yes, that's correct. Now, there's a discussion to be had as to why they're charities. Is there an agenda, whatever? But you can let's just say they build a swimming pool or a tennis court or whatever, and it costs 10 grand plus the VAT. They can get the 2 grand back. So the 12 grand becomes 10 grand. So that's how they can recover the cash and maybe pass it on to the parents.
But that's how the school can recover it. But
that's right. They can pass it on to the
parents. But you can't make the person who's got special education needs exempt from this. It doesn't work, because that's what they're saying they can. They're saying, we'll exempt some people. Well, you're not going to exempt them because you can claim VAT back anyway, but the parents will still be paying.
Yeah, but if you can recover 2 grand on a 12 grand swimming pool or tennis court, you can then go back to the parents and say, look, it's not going to be 20% extra.
It depends if they're building a school or not. That's not because you've got special education needs.
I'm just trying to explain
the other point.
Hang on, wait, let me just bring on our voices. This shows nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices. We've heard enough of these two. Your opportunity to be on and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. And let's get Nadia Chenchi on. She's there in Ipswich. Nadia, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you again, Nana. How are you?
I'm fine. I hope you're well as well. Right, so what do you think? This VAT on private schools, is it not time for them to scrap it now? It's just a non-earner.
It absolutely is the wrong thing to do. I just do not agree with some of the comments that have been made. This is typical of Starmer's strategy, gung-ho strategy, and class war and envy politics. This is going to hurt state schools. Some of the private schools will be able to absorb these extra costs, but a lot of them will not be able to. And then those children are going to have to go into a state school. So how does that help? Anything. The teachers that we need, if we need more teachers, they're not going to be there. So we're going to have a chaotic situation. And when the unions are against something that Labour are bringing forward, then you know there is something fundamentally wrong. And can I just quote, please, the Secretary of State of Education's post?
Yes, please do.
I mean, it was just outrageous. State schools need teachers more than private schools need embossed stationery. Can you believe the ignorance of that statement and how patronising that is? She needs to go and look at some of these private schools.
Well, I think, Nadia,
embossed stationery, that says everything to me.
I think that's the problem. A lot of them are totally disconnected from the real world. Nadia Tenchi, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
You.
Right, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Up next, World View. Donald Trump has returned to Butler, Pennsylvania, nearly 3 months after his assassination attempt on his life. We'll be heading over live to the States in just a moment.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's a huge financial and mental strain for parents, but we have this system now where it talks about they bringing a family member to help, but I don't think that's happening a lot of the time. I think people are having to be off work, look after their child, and often, sorry to say, but their school always calls the mum, and then you have this situation where you have nobody to look after your child. People's grandparents don't seem to want to do it so much, and often family members aren't just down the road, so what we have is no village. And I think it's really important when you have a child that you need that village.
Are children getting more sicker than they used to be, or is it just that we take the odd sniffle a bit more seriously now since 2020?
Yes, I do think the odd sniffle can be. I know in my school they say 3 days away, you know, the slightest little thing, and it's like...
If you have a cold?
Yeah, no, please go in, yeah. And
3 days off if you have a cold for a child, and we wonder why all these parents aren't at work. I think some of these figures about people who could be working and aren't working, they're not necessarily on benefits, but some of them will be people who, during the pandemic, particularly parents, decided to get a different work-life balance. They quite liked being at home, and they realised the children are benefiting from it. Do you think those people are in these statistics, Annette?
Of people staying at home with not working?
Who decided to not go back to work of working age?
Yes, I think a lot of people don't want to go into an office anymore either. They've had that little bit of freedom and they're like, I'm not going in. And I know employers are trying to get them to go in, but they just want to be at home. They want to be near their children if their children are sick, whether that's the mum or the dad. And also a lot of people don't live near their office or wherever. They don't want to commute. Train fares have gone up, so they say, well, why should I pay? So you have this whole knock-on effect throughout the economy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. You've got 1 more hour left. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for World View. as former US President Donald Trump has returned to Butler, Pennsylvania. That's nearly 3 months after the assassination attempt on his life. That is where it happened. Let's travel to the States now and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dutteridge. Paul, welcome. So, the Trump rally, he has returned.
First time in 12 weeks. Now, this was the site of the way it's reported, his first assassination attempt. He's had 2 assassination attempts in 3 months.
Yeah, that's right.
They're not even saying the assassination attempts, that's his first one. It's like now they're keeping count. But so the first time in 12 weeks, he honoured the actual time of the assassination attempt. He was there back speaking exactly the same time. He did start off with the classic, well, what was I saying before I was so rudely interrupted gag, which was quite lighten the mood, and he honoured the memory of the firefighter who was killed whilst defending his family, Corey Comprator, and we had a moment's silence with an opera singer, etc. But yeah, you have to remember, the last time he was there, Biden was still in the race. Biden was still the candidate. He's technically still the president, which amazes me, but Biden was actually the candidate. This looked like, 12 weeks ago, this looked like an easy triumph for Donald Trump on the 13th of July there. And since, obviously, look at the changes we've had. We have a neck-and-neck race in the polls with the Vice President Harris.
Has she, because we've noticed that people are saying that his popularity is surging again. What's going on with Kamala? Because I've heard some rumours about her that are quite negative. So what are people saying about her?
Well, it's the very fact that you're hearing rumours that are negative is kind of the big story. It's Biden seems to be sabotaging her. Every time they allow Biden and prop him up behind it. I know it's remarkable, because I do think there's a lot of grievance from his camp that he was ousted after he'd won all the candidates to actually be the nominee. He's at every speech he's allowed to talk, he just attributes everything he's ever done to his partnership with Kamala, that she was there in the room, everything I've ever done, so that's why your gas is more expensive, that's why you can't afford groceries. So he is kind of giving these backhanded compliments to her. And it's interesting, Saturday Night Live last night, which is a great barometer, you couldn't find a negative about Hillary or Biden in 2016 and 2020. They are laying into this, the vice presidency, shall we say, and laying into her campaign. So it's the very fact that there are negatives being written and said about her. The press themselves, CNN, again, a great barometer for which way the wind is blowing. They do often point out that she doesn't really make herself available as somebody like Vance or Trump does to the press.
And also, shouldn't she go back to the wall or something and brag about the work she's done there? But yet, well, that's not really something to brag about.
She was there last week. She was there once every 3.5 years is perfect. That's all you need. When it's like I said, the official figure is like 12 million, but the estimate really from my team is more like 18 million have come across the border.
Wow.
So they keep releasing these immigration figures saying that immigration is down. The fact is, it's just they're coming in through different immigrants being brought in, bussed in and flown in through different ports of entry, or through the ports of entry now with official sanction from this administration. It is a quite remarkable state of affairs. Also at Butler yesterday, did you see Elon Musk turned up?
Yeah.
Jumping around the stage and gave Donald Trump what do you pick with Elon Musk? Is it Twitter? Is it the cars? But on this occasion, it was Trump announced we're going back to Mars by the end of his administration, and Elon's going to be at the center of that. We're going back to Mars. In 2017, Trump talked about a base on the moon being a kind of a stopping point on the way to Mars. He's resurrected that, and he's got the guy there, and he's pointing to him in the crowd, going, "You can do the rockets, can't you? You'll do the rockets." So by the end of a Trump presidency, we will be on Mars.
Yeah, well, Paul Dutteridge, a pleasure to speak to you. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Next, my interview with Andrew Eborn. You won't want to miss that. But first, let's get some weather.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning into the afternoon, but showers will start developing. Some of these could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder and perhaps merging to give some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, the temperatures up at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high, but feeling unpleasant in the north underneath the rain. And then our focus through Monday evening turns towards the south with heavy spells of rain pushing into Wales and towards the Midlands as well. But as we go through the week, Wednesday holds on to sunshine and showers, but then it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. But what does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
So I just text as you do and then forgot about it.
Well, I didn't believe it at first. I just thought, you know, somebody's trying to wind me up.
You never expect to win something like that.
Definitely get you interested. If I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. Breaking news from earlier this afternoon, Sue Gray has quit her role as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. She says that she's risking becoming a distraction. The Tories say Sir Keir Starmer's government are in chaos. Are they right? Answer my poll on X. It's up right now throughout the show. In the interview, I'm joined by lawyer, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn. Yeah, well, we interviewed him last week, but he only got a few minutes before Sir Keir Starmer started the speech, so we had to leave it there. He'll be here to continue his conversation, discussing his remarkable career from broadcaster to lawyer. He's done everything. You won't want to miss that. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tension in Number 10, including that with the Prime Minister's chief advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into her role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. Well, the Prime Minister has also raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says can have catastrophic global consequences. The PM's warning comes as Israel expands its airstrike in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operations in the south of the country. A record-breaking 973 migrants have crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to the official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882 set in June of this year. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the journey. The total number of arrivals this year has now reached 26,000. Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant overnight attack. It comes as President Zelensky prepares to unveil a victory plan during a crucial allied meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to detail steps towards ending its war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps, US officials suggest it includes a revised request for increased military support and long-range missile systems. Well, as Ukraine nears 1,000 days of conflict with Russia, Boris Johnson says the Russian President Vladimir Putin is bad, not mad. In a candid interview with GB News' Camilla Tominey, the former Prime Minister shed some light on his interactions with Putin, providing a glimpse of their complex relationship.
He means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity, but he's chosen that path. And we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia. It's a mistake for Putin.
And you can watch all the highlights from that interview with Boris Johnson here on GB News at 6 o'clock tonight. And a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting a major boost, thanks to £148 million of investment in cutting-edge medical technologies. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatments, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Lewis. Coming up, breaking news from earlier this afternoon. Sue Gray has quit her role as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, saying that she risked becoming a distraction. The Tories say this is evidence that Sir Keir Starmer's government is in chaos. Then, for the interview, I'm joined by lawyer, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn. He'll be here to discuss his remarkable career from broadcaster to lawyer. He's done it all. That is coming up shortly. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has power gone to Labour's head? This week, the government has seemed to make huge decisions so flippantly, like handing back sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. So has power gone to Labour's head? After all, they've got a stonking majority. And in Supplement Sunday, my panel and I will look at some of the stories which have caught our eye this week. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So 6 minutes after 5 o'clock, and Sue Gray has stepped down from the Prime Minister's top team, has been appointed as part of an envoy for nations and regions, which sounds a bit wishy-washy, doesn't it? In a statement, she said that it had become clear in recent weeks that intense commentary around my position risked becoming a distraction for the government's vital work of change. Well, joining me to discuss this is Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. Henry, welcome to the programme. Really good to talk to you. Not the other Henry Hill, but this Henry Hill. Henry, well, I bet you get that all the time.
Intermittently.
Yeah, Sue Gray stepping down, a lot of people feel obviously she was pushed in a sense. What does that tell us about the state of the Labour Party from your perspective?
I mean, it's remarkable when you consider that, 3 months ago, Labour won one of the biggest parliamentary majorities in the long history of the British Parliament. And yet here we are with them, having bad story after bad story, and now Starmer losing somebody who he decided to make integral to the central operation in Downing Street. Now, you remember the impact that this had on someone like Theresa May when she had to get rid of Nick and Fee after the 2017 election. It is a real blow, and it does reflect, I think, the real viciousness of the infighting inside Labour. There were people in Labour, I don't know whether this is fair or not, who were blaming Sue Gray for the decision to sort of cap SPAD numbers. There were lots of people who'd been hoping to get work in government who hadn't. She was hugely aggravating ministers by intervening over Casement Park, which is a sports ground in Northern Ireland for which she was trying to get money. And it's really not a great sign when you think that we've got a month to go until what the Chancellor is promising to be an enormously painful budget. This is the window in which the government really wants to be firing on all cylinders.
And the role that she's moving into, envoy for nations and regions, I don't think anyone has ever had that position before. It sounds like it's just been made up specifically for her.
Yes. It has, to an extent, but I think it's important to realise that while it may be a wishy-washy job, and we should hope it is actually quite concerning, because Sue Gray, she has views on the nations and regions. I just mentioned Casement Park in Northern Ireland. She was previously blocked from becoming head of the NI Civil Service because the DUP thought that she was too close to Sinn Féin. She was reportedly working very hard behind the scenes to prevent Alistair Jack vetoing Nicola Sturgeon's gender recognition reform bill on trans rights, which he did successfully. So it's not a role in which she can do no damage. It's not some sort of sinecure or technical quango. This is something potentially where Sue Gray could cause quite a lot of trouble. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Northern Irish Unionists, especially, react to having her as the Prime Minister's official representative to them.
Because it's quite concerning, isn't it? Because even though, as you said, it feels like a sidestep. I'm wondering, will she get the same amount of money? Do we know whether she's still going to stick on her 170k, 3,000 more than the Prime Minister?
We don't know that. Of course, there are actually quite a lot of people in government who are paid more than the Prime Minister because the fact that the Prime Minister, ministers and MP salaries are so much more heavily scrutinised than salaries in the civil service means that they do effectively get held down much more than the civil service ones. But if she does, it wouldn't be a surprise. As I said, there are lots of people in the civil service, or at least a good number, who are paid more than the Prime Minister. But I think the particularly damaging thing for Labour was, one, she was in the Prime Minister's office. She was in that Downing Street operation, which meant that she was in the public eye. And I think that this whole saga is a good example of maybe some civil servants should think twice before dabbling in politics, because politics is different. But also because of what it said about their arrogance and their tin ear. She was asked to take a tiny pay cut of a few £1,000s explicitly to avoid that story from coming out, and she refused. And she was, and Labour and Sir Keir Starmer allowed her to refuse. That simply shows an extraordinary lack of political touch for a party that's fresh into government from opposition.
And do you think that the Labour Party feel like they're a little bit power hungry? Because some of the ministers are just coming up with these amazing plans, like David Lammy and his plans, and Ed Miliband with his energy stuff, and, you know, the Chagos Islands, just suddenly giving that away. Surely you'd spend a little bit of time even speaking to the people. I know that it was initiated initially by David Cameron, who then did not, turned it down, and then, who was it in the Conservative Party who then decided to open it up? James Cleverly. But this feels like a policy of distraction. There's so much more going on. Why are we doing this?
I mean, it's really strange. So the Chagos thing, Boris Johnson decided to open sort of agreed to open negotiations, although he then attacked it afterwards. Liz Truss then made the decision to open negotiations, which were then closed under Rishi Sunak. But it's not just that this is that we shouldn't be handing them over. The ICC judgment that people keep referencing is purely advisory, because the UK did not consent to have arbitration that way. But it's the terms of the deal that are so surprising, because, you know, Labour are a progressive party, right? You'd think that if they were going to be giving away a British overseas territory, it would be because of concerns about the views of the native Chagossians who were deported from that territory decades ago. But they've been completely shut out of this deal, and they're absolutely furious. So actually, it looks as if one of Starmer's old lawyer mates is freelancing as chief legal advisor to the Mauritian government, and he's done him a solid, which is absolutely remarkable. But the really strange thing is, you pointed out, yes, you're right, the carbon capture and storage stuff, is that some ministers are getting to make all of these big announcements. But at the same time, Rachel Reeves is wielding the axe. She's made Labour MPs keep the 2-child limit. She's made them cut the winter fuel allowance. She's now announced that every single department is going to have to find £1 billion worth of capital budget cuts. They're not doing that. They're being pressured to roll back on the school VAT policy. They're not doing the non-dom crackdown. They're not doing the private equity tax crackdown, because the Treasury has pointed out quite rightly that it will cost money to do. Like, it's really... It's not that they're all advancing in this sort of grand wave of people who are high on power. It's that a handful of ministers seem to have license to make these huge decisions without proper scrutiny, while all of the others are stuck making budget cuts.
Well, and of course, there is no real... I mean, there's no evidence to suggest that the handover... that there's anything going on between Keir Starmer and a lawyer with regard to the handover of the islands. I mean, that's just what you're perceiving, because he knows someone, you're saying, but there's no evidence to suggest that that's the case, is there?
I mean, look, I'm not saying there was a brown envelope involved, but I'm just pointing out that, you know, this deal has come out of nowhere. A few weeks ago, the government was saying it's too early to say what we're going to do about Chagos, so there's no parliamentary scrutiny. Now they're saying it's too late to talk about the deal with Chagos. So there's no point recalling Parliament. And it is a fact that one of Starmer's former old friends is the chief legal advisor to the Mauritian government. I'm not saying it's corrupt. Right. I'm just saying it's probably why it managed to get on the Prime Minister's radar. Because if you think about it, so Keir Starmer has come in. This country has enormous economic challenges. It's got stagnant growth and all the rest of it. His government is staring down the barrel of collapsing poll ratings and a really difficult budget. And yet he's found the time to sort of rush through this deal on the British Indian Ocean territory, which is a terrible deal.
Well, Henry, it's really good to talk to you. I mean, it may just be a distraction tactic as well, because obviously there's a lot of heat on Keir Starmer at the moment as well. Henry Hill, really good to talk to you. He's the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home. Thank you. Well, today marks the eve of the first anniversary of the attacks in Israel on October the 7th. And remembrance rallies have been held across the country. The pictures on your screen are from the memorial in central London. Now, joining me is defence analyst James Marlowe. James, really good to talk to you. Long time no speak. Right, so James, it's a very sad and poignant moment, obviously, and tomorrow will be the actual day of the anniversary. What are your thoughts on where we are now since that day?
Well, it's nice to speak and to see you again, Nana, after some time. I have just got back from Israel. I was there for a number of weeks. I spoke to a number of the hostage families, including Shani Luke. You may remember her because that was one of the famous pieces of video taken by Hamas. She was on the back of a pickup truck. I spoke with her father at the time. Her father said to me that this was so hard for a father to see his daughter like that, but we didn't know at the time, these are his words, we didn't know at the time that she was dead, and that was confirmed afterwards. But in this particular exhibition, which marks the one-year anniversary in Jerusalem, which I was invited to, I met a lot of the hostage families. And I have to tell you, some of them were speaking. There was other politicians who were also speaking as well. It was very solemn. And then there was somebody on the stage with a guitar. And I have to tell you, there was not a dry face, eyes. My eyes were streaming, and it was completely unexpected because it was just so, you were in that moment, and to speak with these people and to know that in some cases they've still got hostages in Gaza, in the dungeon. There's 101 of them left. There's 97 altogether taken from October the 7th, plus 4, 2 Arabs and 2 Israelis who've been held now for almost 11 years. And by the way, those 97 include, of course, the Bibas children, 1-year-old or just over 1-year-old now, and his brother, 5 years old, coming up on 5 years old. And there's also one British citizen, Emily Damari. She's 28 years old. She visited the UK many times. She loved football. She was getting tickets for football matches when she could come over to the UK. And it's just so sad because at the same time, Hezbollah, as you asked me about what do I think of the situation, Hezbollah has been firing every single day into northern Israel since October the 8th. And for 11 months, Israel has been calling out, and I've said this many times on many networks, including GBNews, eventually, if something is not done about Hezbollah, Israel will have to take its steps. Israel will have to do what the United Nations should have done back in 2006 on the General Security Council Resolution 1701. And we see that now after 11 months. And it's as if the world was completely oblivious to really what was taking place.
And what we're seeing on our screens is live pictures of Beirut at the moment. So we'll just sort of bring you some of that detail live. So, James, what should Israel do now? Because they are in a quandary. They cannot simply stop what they're doing because obviously they need the arms. They need to carry on to try and hopefully push forward with a ceasefire. But everyone seems to be putting pressure on Israel to ceasefire, and I'm not hearing enough on pressure on Iran and Hezbollah, the Houthis, and all the others. I mean, why is all the pressure on Israel?
Well, you mentioned 3 there, but Israel is actually fighting on 7 different fronts. Just a couple of days ago, within a 12-hour period, there were rockets coming over from Yemen, from Iraq, and of course from Lebanon. Israel's also fighting on Gaza, Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank, and also Syria and Iran as well. And Israel says it is going to retaliate against the massive Iranian attack, which took place last week. It's the second attack, the first one being, I believe it was the 14th of April, and we're waiting for that to take place. The Iranians say that if Israel does that, they will respond against Israel. So it's very unclear what's going to take place, but I do believe that there will be some type of retaliation against Iran. And this is also to show the Iranians, who control all of these proxies, as you know, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah, of course. It's to show Iran that actually your proxies are slowly being taken out. It's taking a long time. Originally, when Israel went into Gaza, it said, maybe not publicly, but I knew about this information, that it was going to take at least a year. Of course, it has taken a year. The reason why it's taken so long is because at the time, it was unknown how many underground tunnels there were. If you take the underground map, it's actually that times 4 in terms of all the tunnels. And that's clearly where the hostages are being held. And Israel had no idea that it was as big and as vast as what it has actually found and the evidence it has seen with its troops over there. Now, we're seeing the same thing on the Israeli-Lebanon border, and indeed the Ratwan faction within Hezbollah in Lebanon was also planning a very similar October the 7th attack just last week, which is the reason why Israel says it made this preempted attack. It's actually taken over a number of those tunnels now, and of course it's hitting Hezbollah targets and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine across Lebanon, but specifically in Beirut. You said you were showing these pictures just beforehand, and in southern Lebanon. Now, a lot of those residents we know have gone away, have moved, and we know that there is a humanitarian problem inside of Lebanon. But that's been the situation in southern Israel and in northern Israel for 12 months.
Yeah, well, listen, James, you know, we're all praying for the people of Israel, and of course we would like to see this fighting stop. I'm hoping that the world are opening their eyes to seeing what Israel are having to deal with, and maybe perhaps there will be some form of ceasefire very soon. James Marlowe, really good to talk to you. He's a defence analyst. Thank you very much. 21 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? We're near the end of the show, but up next, it's Interview. Lawyer, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn will continue where he left off next week, or last week.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And we've got a treat, not only to have you here, but you've brought loads of exclusives for us this morning.
Well,
your chat with Robert Jenrick.
Just for you, Elliot. Robert Jenrick, of course, is the front-runner to be Tory leader.
He is now, yeah.
Amongst Tory MPs, yeah. And he's been talking to us for my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast, about immigration, about criminals being released from prison. Also, really importantly,
most importantly, some would say.
Yeah, biscuits. Now,
biscuits.
He was, I should explain to viewers, Robert Jenrick, during the COVID pandemic, had to pull together a hamper of goods for those isolating, and he put in a special biscuit.
Yes.
Here's what we had to say on the podcast.
We'll move on to the future and what your plans are. Your biggest achievement in government, what do you reckon it was? I know what it was.
Well, you go first.
Yeah, custard creams.
I thought you were going to say that I saved a penny. That was another one of our campaigns, yeah.
But custard creams, briefly. I mean, you were the community secretary. You had to provide food boxes during the COVID pandemic. And what did you put into those food boxes?
Custard creams, the people's favourite biscuit.
What else is there?
The people's favourite biscuit. Now, across the country,
Aidan.
Coffees are being dropped across the country.
Yeah,
is that really the people's favourite biscuit, Aidan?
Listen, you'll never change my opinion. I like shortbread, but I like it homemade.
with a sprinkling of sugar. Listen, I'm type 1 diabetic. I had to be quite moderate in terms of my intake, but goodness me.
I mean,
a nice cup of tea.
that's a good one.
It's
That's
about the
a good
shape
answer.
as well. If you show, you know, some more intelligent biscuit companies, they will make shapes of biscuit that fit into the tea. But it's nothing worse than when you put it into a narrow cup and it won't
go in, will it? You can't hit the
So you like the triangular?
Not really
shortbread?
fingers. Just something a bit elongated that I can turn sideways and dip in like that.
Got you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, hello. Good afternoon, 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now it is time for the interview. My guest is Andrew Eborn. He's had loads of jobs. He's been a lawyer, a business strategist, a broadcaster, a futurist, whatever that means. He also isn't shy, giving his opinions as he has appeared on BBC, Sky, CNN, and pretty much everywhere, and more importantly, obviously, here. So, have you heard about anybody like this man? No, joining me, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, so where were we last week? We were talking about making money.
Yes.
And what your thing is.
So basically, what I've done, my background is as an intellectual property lawyer, and throughout my career, basically been helping people make money. So we're looking at things. So we did the very first computer game rights, for example, for Formula One. I then became the agent for selling those around the world and became a multi-billion-dollar business as a result. I also did the very first karaoke. I brought that over from Japan to here with Pioneer. In the early days, they used to have these enormous discs called laser karaokes, and that worked on that sort of basis. But in Japan, it was very polite. People would sit around, businessmen in their suits, and they would listen very carefully. And all the Japanese came over and they listened to people murdering songs from Greece or something like that, where the whole crowd sort of jumped up and did that. But in addition to that, the very first live streaming. So I used to work with the FA, and we used to stream women's football. It wasn't as popular in those days as it was. So we would get it to places that it couldn't otherwise reach. And in addition to that, we were doing lots of strategic alliances with people like when The Independent, for example, started to put videos on their site. Through my company, Octopus TV, we'd help them do a deal with the Press Association for their content and use that technology to make that make sense as well.
So what's happened to Octopus TV? That's still going,
Octopus TV is still me, and my company.
Still your business?
We do across what I call the IP value chain. So we do everything from formats for TV, and we have that with people who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We also do productions, and I talked about Duran with their video, which we did recently with Alison Jackson, the BAFTA award-winning artist. But also I'm going to Japan in a few weeks' time to do a number of new series. We're doing Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact. We're turning that into a whole series in and of itself, and that was launched on this very channel, which we did every Saturday morning, and basically looking at that sort of side. But we're also doing a lifestyle programme looking about Japan technology and other things as well. So you probably know I do the Andrew Eborn show. Who else could do it, I guess? And we have every day.
Somebody else called Andrew Eborn.
No, somebody else called Andrew.
There might be another one.
Got to license that one. But what I love about it is every day, I have Errol Musk, who's Elon Musk's father, on, and he looks incredibly like him. But it's all sorts of revelations about Elon and so on and so forth. And he's a fascinating character. And GB News have been running a series of articles on their brilliant website as a result of that as well, working with your digital team. So it's working across all that sort of things. But in addition, it's looking at the new forms of entertainment. So we did the very first holograms, for example. And I did something on Hamley's window display, where you had sort of magical hands floating in midair using holograms. So it's the new way of immersive technology and immersive entertainment on that sort of basis.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Really is fascinating. So you're going to Japan very shortly. You've got a big project there, launching some stuff of your own. What's been the most, in your view, your biggest moment? Your most memorable moment?
I appeared on this brilliant show last week and again this week, something called Nana Akua, and it was absolutely a joy. It's the highlight of my career. I mentioned last week that actually one of my highlights was Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
And it was the movie Lost in Translation, which starred Bill Murray. And it was about the agency that I work with called Dentsu. And it's all about doing advertising campaigns. These big A-list stars do it for two reasons. One, there's a lot of money. And secondly, because it's in Japan, not a lot of people see it. And on the 9/11, when the planes were going into the Twin Towers, I was on the green with Stephen Hawking. So a really memorable moment. And we were filming for a brand called Uniqlo.
You were there at the time?
I was there at the time, and we were hearing it whilst we were filming with him. So absolutely horrendous on that sort of basis. We worked on that sort of... There we are, there's Stephen Hawking. That was me a few years ago.
Are you in that picture?
Yeah, I know it doesn't look like me at all.
The guy with the glasses, not Stephen.
With glasses, not Stephen
That's
Hawking.
Andrew Eborn.
I know, it's completely changed.
You're a lot better looking now.
Well, that's very kind of you. That's very good. Yes, it's the joy of being on a red sofa. It's always a thrill and TV stuff. And I think what I find, and during lockdown we did a lot of this sort of stuff, where we spoke to people about their own issues, and everybody's the same deep down. And mental health, I know it's become a sort of buzzword now, but if you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh? When we had lockdown, we were doing daily interviews with the great and good. So I had Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, on my show, on my show, a lot talking about his work. They're brilliant. He's a brilliant writer and does something called The White Ship. But they talk about the challenges that they have as well on that sort of basis. And I think those in the public eye who can talk about those things can be really important to people. So people are all the same. And I think if you treat everybody like a celebrity, you can't go too far wrong.
Well, you've got a book. We always do your little book at the end. So the book of failure that you've written.
Well,
what was your big... Is it lots of failures or... Oh, my God.
Everything's a surprise. It's always good. No, I should also tell I'm a member of the Magic Circle as well. So tonight, straight after this, I'm going down to Clapham, the Grand in Clapham, and I'm going to be doing the red carpet with all sorts of celebrities.
Is it?
Down there. So
really?
Combined magic and entertainment.
Was that your best trick?
I'll disappear. That'll be my best trick. Straight after this. The book of failure. This is what we spoke about last time. Everybody talks about success, but never about the failure that leads to that success. So I was commissioned to do a series of articles for The Drum, looking at failures throughout history, and we worked on that sort of basis. You can get this. This is a rare unsigned copy. It's on the email. Your copy.
You're going to sign one for me now.
I'll sign one for you now. It's got to be good.
Andrew Eborn, you're back on GB News very soon, aren't you? I should imagine. When you're back on, do you know?
Oh, I don't know. More platforms than Paddington, but I will be back.
Oh, right, lovely. That is a brilliant Andrew Eborn. There you go. A lot of people ask me, well, that's not fair. We wanted to hear the rest. We wanted to hear what Andrew had to say. So we brought him back. Right, this is GB News. It's just gone 5:30. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, we'll continue with our Great British debates. And I'm asking, has power gone to Labour's head? But first, let's get your latest news with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good afternoon, it's 5:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. So Keir Starmer's facing fresh turmoil as his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, has resigned. Her exit follows reports of tensions in Number 10, including with the Prime Minister's chief advisor, Morgan McSweeney, who's now stepping into the role. Conservative leadership contender Robert Jenrick says her departure exposes vicious Labour infighting and claims the government is in freefall. In response, Downing Street has announced 5 new senior appointments, with Sir Keir Starmer insisting the changes will strengthen his team as he approaches 100 days in office. The Prime Minister has also raised concerns that the sparks of war in the Middle East are igniting tensions at home, with a sharp rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims. Writing in the Sunday Times, he has also raised fears of a direct conflict between Iran and Israel, which he says could have catastrophic global consequences. Starmer's warning also comes as Israel expands its airstrikes in Lebanon, while the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, with Israel claiming its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters in its ground operations in the south of the country. Now, a record-breaking 973 migrants have crossed the English Channel in a single day. According to new official figures, they arrived in 17 small boats, surpassing the previous record of 882, set in July of this year. Yesterday's surge also came as 4 migrants, including a young child, sadly died making the perilous journey. A total number of arrivals this year has now reached 26,000. And finally, a new blood test that could detect 12 common cancers early is getting major boost. Thanks to a £148 million investment in cutting-edge medical technologies. The Health Secretary says the funding will also help advanced AI diagnosis and personalised treatment, with research hubs being set up across UK universities. Wes Streeting, who himself is a cancer survivor, says the investment could save lives while strengthening Britain's role as a leader in life sciences. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning into the afternoon, but showers will start developing. Some of these could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder and perhaps merging to give some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, temperatures up at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high, but feeling unpleasant in the north underneath the rain. And then our focus through Monday evening turns towards the south, with heavy spells of rain pushing into Wales and towards the Midlands as well. But as we go through the week, Wednesday holds on to sunshine and showers, but then it is going to be turning colder from the north. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome. If you just tuned in, we are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, has power gone to Labour's head? Earlier this week, the government announced that the UK would be giving up sovereignty of the cluster of islands in the Indian Ocean. Yes, I mean, the deal reached after years of negotiation will see the Chagos Islands being handed over to Mauritius. But that's not all the government's been up to. The Chancellor has also committed a whopping £22 billion of carbon capture and storage projects. I mean, do they think that they can just pass everything through because of their huge majority? So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has power gone to Labour's head? Joining me now is political commentator Jonathan Liss and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Let's start with you, Jonathan. It's gone to their heads, hasn't it? They've got this big majority. They think they can do what they like, so they're coming up with all these policies, and they're just getting a bit power crazed.
No, I don't think so. I think that obviously, if you have a government with a big majority, they can get basically anything through. But that doesn't mean that the power's gone to the head. If Labour's doing what it said it more or less would do, then that's to be expected. They're not coming out with a raft of policies, apart from obviously Winterfield, which you discussed before, a raft of new policies that no one had any idea about, and so ramming those through Parliament.
Well, the Chagos Islands, you could argue that suddenly it just appeared.
No. That's literally not the case. That negotiation was begun under the last government in 2022. So there's been a lot of kind of hysterical backtracking by Conservative leadership candidates who want to kind of absolve themselves of any responsibility for that. But that was entirely started by them and finished by the Labour government. And the problem with that particular issue is not about the ceding of sovereignty per se. In my opinion, it's the fact that the Chagos Islanders were not involved in negotiations.
That's part of it.
So
I agree with that.
But I don't think that this is going to be anything that sort of cuts
well,
through,
there you go. The fact that they did something without even asking the people of the island shows power has gone to their heads.
No, because
I agree. That's the definition of power, of being power crazed. The fact that you are denying someone their right to self-determination. Like the Falklands, however many years ago, by a whopping 99% said they want to be Brits. Gibraltar, again, I'm not sure what the percentage was, self-determination, they've denied, albeit probably in the grand scheme of things, a few thousand people. I don't know what the population is. It's the principle of self-determinating yourself and your identity. So I think that to have that, and you're right, Jonathan, this happened with James Cleverly over recent years, Conservative government, they started the dialogue. But just to have the rug pulled from under your feet, I think is disgraceful. I'm not buying into all of the scaremongering that the Falklands will be next. Gibraltar will be next. That's a load of baloney.
Well, have you not heard the Falklands? Argentina have said we'll do everything in our power.
That doesn't
They've been saber-rattling for years.
But they are saying it, so I wouldn't dismiss it. I'm just saying that has happened.
I'm not dismissing that they're saber-rattling. I'm dismissing that they're going to do something about it.
Well, no, but they may well do something about it.
I don't think they
will.
OK, well, in fact, we don't know whether they will.
We do know.
We do know. They've said consistently through every Argentine government since 1982, they've said there will not be another military campaign, and the Argentine economy is in no state to even consider it. The Argentine president's a massive Thatcherite. He loves Thatcher.
Nor was it last time, Jonathan.
Anything until it is, so you don't know.
Well, that's why we have military installations on the Falklands.
But you can't say that with any definitive,
We had a military installation. We had a platoon of Royal Marines, and it didn't stop them. And also, in 1982, the Argentinian government was bankrupt, and they actually invaded Argentina. They actually invaded Las Malvinas to try and prop up that poxy dictatorship or whatever. So I'm not sure we can predict exactly what the RGs are going to do.
We can't.
But I think I can speak on a solid foundation. I don't think Keir Starmer would do that. I know he wouldn't. There would be uproar, there would be civil disobedience. If he thought there were rioting during the summer, the whole country would combust. The veterans in their 60s and 70s would wonder what the hell they were taking bullets for, dodging bullets. The military wouldn't allow it, because how are you going to recruit a soldier knowing that if you go to war in 30 or 40 years' time, you're going to hand back whatever you've secured to the enemy?
Well, exactly.
It's terrible.
Well, I mean, also the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, could be facing a Commons vote on Chagos as well over the handover, because a lot of people are very dissatisfied with what's happened, which is why we're sort of looking at the amount of power they have. I mean, do you not think, Jonathan, it's actually quite unhealthy to have this massive majority that the Labour Party have, simply because they can almost try and push things through unchallenged?
I have said for many, many years that I believe there should be proportional representation in this country, which would require parties to coalesce and to cooperate with each other. And I think that would deliver much healthier politics. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be problems. I mean, we see the deadlock that happens on the continent sometimes when we go for months, or in Belgium's case, over a year at one point without having a government. But sometimes you do have a government. It doesn't actually work that well for us over here. So yes, I would absolutely be in favour of having a fairer voting system, which would get rid of those big majorities. But we have the system we have, and Labour has every right to implement its agenda with the parliamentary system that we have.
All right, well, lots of people have been getting in touch with their thoughts on this issue as well, which is quite interesting. A lot of people have things to say. David says this: interested to see see if Lindsay Hoyle, that's of course the Speaker, makes a comment in Parliament tomorrow, read the Jago silence, not being discussed in Parliament first. He had a go at rushing once, remember. I'm not sure what you mean there, but I think you mean something, but I don't know what it is. But thank you for that. And Henry Bagley says, Henry Hill of Conservative Home speaks the truth. The Chagos deal is dodgy. That's a view that people may hold. Elizabeth talks about Sue Gray. She says, Sue Gray has gone, now just the rest of them. And one more, I'll do one more, then why not? Michael says, I reckon Starmer spends too much time posing in front of the mirror with his new clothes and not enough time smashing the gangs. Right, next it's time for Supplement Sunday. My panel and I will be discussing some of the other stories that caught our eye. Stay tuned, do not go anywhere.
I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Princess of Wales has begun planning her annual Christmas Carol concert, marking her return to royal duties after chemotherapy. Princess Catherine held a meeting at Windsor Castle to discuss the events, which will be broadcast this Christmas as she continues to ease back into public engagements. A wonderful story, and I'm joined now by the royal commentator, Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, fantastic stuff. This will be just the kind of royal Christmas message we really, really want, and fantastic news about Catherine's return. Tell us more about this amazing event.
Well, you're absolutely right, because Together Christmas, which is her carol concert, it's been an annual since 2021. It's marvellous news because she's moving back toward royal duties, that's absolutely clear. And the question is, of course, when will we see her next? And, you know, we're all looking forward perhaps to seeing her on Remembrance Day. I'm sure that that is now a definite possibility at the Cenotaph, and subsequently, very definitely, for one of the highlights of the year at Westminster Abbey, which is her concert.
When can we expect any details, for example, of the choice of carols? Because, I mean, that's what people really want to know. What are the details? When are they going to come out?
Well, I don't know when they will be released. Remember, even now, these meetings and these details, they're being very, very carefully managed. What we've got is very, very good news, but there's no doubt, as she made clear in her recent video message, there is still some way to go, and being cancer-free is her priority, obviously. So let's hope, and also let's hope we might see her at the Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance. Just a thought.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, now it's time for Supplement Sunday, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories that have caught their eye. Joining me, author... you're not an author, are you?
I am an author. I've published a book.
Oh, yeah.
25 years ago.
16 pages cookbook.
It was a cookbook.
Why am I not surprised it was a cookbook? Right. I'll start with you, Danny Kelly.
Well, listen, I've set myself up for a fall with you, young lady, because my Sunday supplement is about food. The smell of money. National Lottery to introduce chocolate-scented scratch cards to boost sales. And I don't know how to feel about it. So fewer and fewer people are buying the scratch cards. They've come up with a novelty idea, a gimmick, if you like. So it actually smells of chocolate. Would you believe it or not?
Oh, I don't. Wow. Would you buy a chocolate-scented scratch card?
Only if I could eat it, to be honest.
But can you... So it's just...
It's not edible, no.
So it's not even edible. It just
of course it's not edible. It's
chocolate.
made of cardboard and paper and silver paint that you scratch off.
With a chocolate inside or something?
No, you're thinking of
with an after 8
a Christmas thing, one of them advent calendars. No, it just smells of chocolate.
Oh, that's a silly idea. That's not going to make you buy the things. And also, they're in those things, so you can't get to them anyway.
Yeah, that's the point, yeah. They're all behind Perspex lockers.
That's really sad. I wonder who thought of that.
Point,
yeah, that's a great point.
I wonder who thought of that.
Do you remember the chocolate flavoured stickers? The chocolate... I remember my sisters had them. Stickers that you used to scratch and sniff.
Oh, yeah, those ones. Yes, I do remember those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that we thought were cool.
I used to hate people that had pencil cases that looked like food. You know what I mean? It'd be like, that is not a sandwich. Those are not digestive biscuits. Get out of here. Just make me hungry. Right, Jonathan List, what have you got for us?
I've got a woman gets to reply to a job application 48 years on. It's on the BBC website. This is Tizzy Hodson from Lincolnshire, who applied to be a motorcycle stunt driver in 1976, but the letter had been stuck behind a post office drawer all these years.
Wow.
It was found and sent back to her, and she has no idea how, since she's moved house about 50 times and moved countries many times. But the good news is that she did actually manage to live her dream.
In that career?
Seems to have had a very adventurous life.
Not amazing.
But alas, not at that particular
How do they track her down? That's amazing. She's moved house, she's moved country, they still track her down.
God, they've obviously got too much time on their hands, to be honest with you.
It's a nice story.
Right, and my one is actually about the weight loss jabs. A lot of people are taking these as Ozempic and whatever the weight loss jabs are, semaglutide and all that. But people are saying, are they an excuse to be lazy? That is the question. Do you think they're an excuse for people to be lazy? Yeah, because they're just injecting themselves and the weight just falls off and then you can just...
I think that we have this expectation that if you want good things, you have to work for them. There has to be a trade-off. And we're not sort of quite built ethically for something where you can just have something great and not have to do anything for it.
Well, you do have something for it. I mean, it comes at the cost of your pancreas and some of your vital organs.
Obviously, they're still researching it, aren't they?
Yeah, it's toxic, so obviously your body has to work harder to sort of bring it in. And the other thing is that the hormone that it produces that tells you that you're satiated and full, that will then kind of switch itself off if you use this thing for too long, and then you will now need the hormone. You'll sort of need to carry on taking it.
Oh, right, OK.
So it does come at a cost.
I'm guessing it's targeting fat people, obese people. I don't know why you're smiling at that.
You're cuddly, you're not fat, Dan.
Well, that's very kind.
He's cuddly, isn't he?
So it's an appetite suppressant. Is it making you lazy? I don't think it's making you lazy in the sense that maybe you're not going to go for the run because you're not going to have the big meal at night.
Why would you bother if the aim of the run was to make you thinner and this thing can do it?
But it's difficult. If you are overweight, it's difficult. I don't like being fat. It's difficult. It's a combination of being lazy, running a business, drinking too much wine maybe during the week, and you get the munchies in bed.
You're answering all your questions.
Exactly. So that's probably a typical reason why people are overweight.
Would you want to take that jab or...?
Yeah, I would do, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I would do, if it's a shortcut to losing weight. Yeah, because I go to the gym, but I enjoy a glass of wine at night. I obviously consume too many calories and I don't offset it with exercise. So if I could stop the big meal at night, then yeah, I would do. Yeah,
really?
Definitely. Yeah, I would do.
You have to be careful, though, with that as well, because you might lose weight too quickly.
I wouldn't lose too much weight, because I know you like me cuddly.
Wait, don't lose too much weight, Daddy. Half of those people on that thing, they get Ozempic face or whatever they call it now.
What's that then?
A zombie face, because all the fat's sort of, you know, all the skin's loose and it's just hanging like the nodding dog, like the Churchill dog.
Yeah, some people...
Which is what would happen to you if you did.
Well, some people suit carrying a bit of weight, and I think I might be one of them.
I think you are, Danny. I'm sorry to tell you if you wanted that thing.
That's all right.
No, it's you look good. There's more of him to love. Well, listen, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Let's read some of them. Michael, Jill says, Labour think they found something they can justify, but books and education have no VAT as principle. This is about the VAT on the schools, by the way. We're not subsidising them as they are not taking up their places in state schools. They actually pay twice over, which is what I think. It's a con, and Greece tried it, found it to be a mistake. Of course, Labour can't learn from others in their arrogance. So that is about the question, are Labour sort of, are they too much? Is power going to their heads? What else have I got here? Any more great messages that you sent sent me. This one from Grumpy Granddaddy said, when the Tories handed over the nation's finances to Labour, everything was looking good. The economy was doing well. Interest rates were finally coming down. Even gas and electricity was coming down in price. In just 101 days, we are told everything is going up again. It can only be down to Labour and their policies. 101 days.
Really?
Interesting, because some people called Cruella de Vil. What's the name?
Oh, the Hound of Baskervilles. That's not Hound of Baskervilles.
101 Dalmatians.
Also, the timing is so
101 Dalmatians, right. That's it.
Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, on my Twitter poll, is Starmer's government in chaos? And according to my Twitter poll, 96.5% of you think yes, and 3.5% of you think no. Wow. So pretty much unanimous, most of you thinking that...
You'd have thought.
Well, what would you have thought? It's true, though, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
Well, listen, I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny, thank you so much. And also political commentator Jonathan Liss. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. Now, stay tuned. Do not go anywhere, because up next is that sensational interview that Camilla Tominey did with Boris Johnson. A full hour for you to enjoy, so stay tuned for that. I am back on Friday for Britain's Newsroom at 9:30 till midday. And I'll be back next week on Saturday, Sunday, same time, same place. Be there or be square. I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a fabulous week. Thank you so much for your company.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A lot cloudier out there this afternoon, but brighter tomorrow with sunshine and showers before turning colder as we end the new week. So low pressure is dominating out towards the west. We've got frontal systems bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So through this afternoon, cloud and rain will continue to push its way north and eastwards, coming into northern parts of England and then later on into parts of Scotland. Further towards the west, it will turn a bit drier with clearer skies developing, but also some showers pushing through as well. Otherwise, the towns and cities holding up generally around 10 or 11 degrees to start Monday morning. But it's going to be a damp and gloomy start across much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning and into the afternoon. We've also got an easterly wind, so a chilly feel here underneath the cloud and rain. Across Northern Ireland, we may see some sunshine to start the morning, especially towards the west, but we have got showery outbreaks of rain across northwestern parts of England. Towards the south, some bright skies to start the morning, but also some showers. So through the rest of Monday morning, cloudy conditions remain across northern parts of Scotland, but further towards the south, plenty of bright skies through the morning